Okay, Mr. Chairman, we are live and recording.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday, January the 13th, 2021 session of the North Carolina Property Tax Commission. I'm Bob Hunter, Chairman of the Commission. Also this morning we have Bill Peasley, who is Commissioner, Vice Chairman Terry Wheeler, and Commissioner Alex Guest, Commissioner June Michaud, and our Counsel and Secretary is Steve Pelfrey, and Linda Garrett you have just heard from, and Alexandra Bendette is our Department of Revenue, Local Government Property Tax Commission staff person, and also is operating our WebEx hearing this morning. Welcome everyone. Well, let me go ahead and let's quickly go over the calendar. The one case we have for hearing this morning is Brian Griffith and Clark D. Harbold, 19 Property Tax Commission 0613. County is represented by Robert Adden, and the taxpayers. Mr. Griffin, are you the only one, or is anybody else, Mr. Harbold, with you, or?
I will be the only one today. Okay,
thank you. And we also had several other cases on the docket, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cases that were either withdrawn, continued, or settled. So, as I mentioned, we have one case for hearing today in Mecklenburg County. And so the witnesses have already been sworn. Are there any pending motions or anything that we need to address, Mr. Adden, Mr. Griffin?
No, Your Honor, we're ready to go.
All right, Mr. Griffin, everything, nothing pending from your standpoint?
No, sir.
Are there any exhibits that are going to be objected to at this time from either party?
We don't have any problems with any objections to the taxpayers' exhibits.
And no objections here.
Okay, so we'll deem the exhibits admitted. This is going to be the first really contested hearing that we've done like this virtually, where we're all in our individual homes or offices. Before, as Mr. Adden knows, we've been in a large room the commission has in the Department of Revenue building in Raleigh, and we've used a big screen and individual mics. And with everything that's going on and access to buildings, we decided that we would try it from home or offices, and this is the first week we're doing that, and this is the actual first what we would call a contested case where we're going to have exhibits that we'll be hearing. So hopefully everything will go well, and we will adapt as we go. So at this time, let's get opening arguments from Mr. Griffith. If you'll tell us briefly what this case is about, and since you're representing yourself, this is what we call an opening argument. Then the county, Mr. Adden will have a chance to briefly tell us what it's about, and then Mr. Griffin, you'll have a chance to present your evidence, and your testimony then, of course, is under oath. Mr. Griffin?
Okay. I guess today, like we said, we're here looking at parcel 18506-204 and including what I would just call the Hunter Wonderwood neighborhood, which is Hunter Lane and Wonderwood Drive. And our case today is that this particular area is being arbitrarily assessed using a market extraction method in lieu of what we would deem could possibly be a comparable sales method, which seems to be used on some adjacent areas to this particular neighborhood.
Mr. Griffin, I'm not getting your video. Do you have your video running?
Okay.
There you go. Thank you.
Because that's one. And so basically, we feel like the market extraction method, we feel like is arbitrarily and unfairly utilized for this particular area. And it basically has to do with back in 2015, this area became really hot. Builders came in and started buying up everything in sight, and they were really kind of hammering doors in the neighborhood because I was in prior to it. They were hammering doors, trying to get people to sell. And the whole premise of all these sales was based on a tree save ordinance that was put in place by, I guess, the county here, Mecklenburg. And basically what this tree ordinance said was that they were going to be able to come into the neighborhood. They were going to be able to change the zoning from R3 to R5, which would allow them to split the lots, because then at that point they only needed 50 foot of frontage. And the only recourse they had was they had to promise to save 25% of the trees on the properties, of which they crammed in the back of the lot. So you really don't see any trees. They crammed them in the back of the lots, and they were able to split the lots. So you had this big influx of builders buying lots. You had a few individuals that also came in trying to buy, seeing, value starting to move. Some of these people came in, thought they were going to buy some stuff and turn for a quick profit, which we'd like to show in some of our exhibits didn't pan out quite as well for some of these people. I know the county's got the Glasgow case. We're kind of attaching that to ours also, just to say that basically in that case, they make a note that that the market extraction method indicates the value of an underlying land when market data indicates multiple such sales in a market area. So I do want to kind of just press on that point. It's on page 5 of the Glasgow case. We can look at that. But, of what we're trying to say multiple sales is, I think, kind of does reflect on what's going on in our neighborhood versus what's going on in adjacent areas that match up in all areas, from location and types of houses and sizes of lots. And then just the last thing would just to have a closing argument on what we feel like, the price should be for the area, as opposed to the county presenting it at $382,500. So that's kind of what some of our exhibits are going to show today.
Okay, and I believe the value that you said in one of the documents that you contended your property should be is?
Well, now, so I know what's written is like maybe 318 is what they had on there, which was something that one of our early appeal processes, based on kind of a presentation today, we're saying like 277, which is basically just kind of an average of what we deem as, reliable sales in our particular area.
Okay, so it's now 277,000.
Right.
All right, Mr. Adden, we'll hear briefly from you for open.
Yeah, briefly, as Mr. Griffin said, this is a vacant lot. Actually, the vacant lot is between Mr. Griffin's house on one side and Clark Harbaugh's house on the other side. I guess Mr. Griffin and Mr. Harbaugh bought this property as a vacant lot in between them. And so it's a vacant lot sale. The the BER value is $382,500. The county has done some adjustments to that value, and not much, but the county's proposed value is $380,000. The taxpayer had a value of $318,800 on the AB 14. Now I understand he thinks the value is only $277. But we did send to the Property Tax Commission and to Mr. Griffin a copy of the Property Tax Commission's final decision in the James Glasgow case, which was that 6-hour hearing that we had back in July. I think it was the first virtual hearing that we did. Because of that case dealt with the market extraction method, and in that case, the property tax commission approved the county's method for valuing vacant land in these types of neighborhoods. As Mr. Griffin said, this neighborhood is near the Cotswold Shopping Center. It's highly, as Mr. Griffin said, it's a highly thought out area around the Cotswold area. You only about less than 5 miles from the center city of Charlotte, and a lot of sales in this area that we think support the county's value of $380,000.
All right, is that all, Mr. Griffin? Mr. Adden at this time? All right, if everyone, I think, has got their mics muted except when you're speaking. Mr. Griffin, it's your time now to present your evidence. So we'll hear from you and your testimony, anything you want us to consider.
Okay, and I will apologize. I know we do have a lot of information, but I was not sure as far as, when we get in, was it going to be something that, things would be questioned, and then you would say, well, do you have proof of that value or something like that? So, maybe there is a lot of, supporting documentation that, basically we probably, do not need to look at. I did put some Excel spreadsheets at the beginning of each of my sections, and, I can point out the page number when we get to those. So just to
let me ask you, Mr. Griffin, and also Mr. Adden, are y'all going to be screen sharing anything?
I don't intend to. If everybody has our packet is 20 pages long, and as far as cross-examining Mr. Griffin, I just will refer to a couple of pages of his packet.
Mr. Griffin, are you going to have any screen sharing?
I was not aware that we could do that. I knew I'd mailed out the 6 packets, so I thought that was just going to kind of be visible. We would all be looking at the packets, so I did not prepare to screenshot anything.
Okay, we do have it. Some have it printed it out, and some have it on a separate screen. So we do have it, and it sounds like I do think. Well, we'll have to find out for sure from Alexandra later, since you don't need a screen share, whether or not that is, we have that capability. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Griffin. Sorry for the interruption.
No, that's quite all right. So as we say, we're, the part we're looking at, this particular lot is in the Hunter Lane Wonderwood Drive neighborhood. And this is almost like a U-shaped neighborhood that, as Mr. Adden said, it was a lot of purchases that started in 2015. Now, I do want to point out, which, kind of going through our exhibits, whether or not anybody, if we need to look at any of this, I don't know. I had just a shot of the property itself as you get in, and then aerial shots of where the property is located. I think everybody knows, but I guess if you look at page 5, it does kind of show the lot. So Mr. Adden said it is between myself and the other part owner, Clark Harbold. And the thing is, we're kind of stuck on both sides of the game here. So in other words, people are coming in and they're buying these lots. Started off with this tree ordinance, and then it's kind of slowed down because basically the owners in this neighborhood, they were down in the county's office in multiple letters, and I was a part of it. And we got this tree ordinance rescinded, which now means people are just buying a lot, and things have slowed down because there's only so much you can pay for a lot and then put a house on it and still be able to sell it and make a profit, which is what these builders have been doing. Clark and myself are kind of stuck on both sides. We get this high valuation of land, so we have to pay that on the land. And then, we each own adjacent properties. So we have a land and an improvement or a structure, and we have to pay taxes on something that's over the value of what's being sold in the neighborhood. Basically, I guess going back to the first evaluation of this property, things were insanely high. And I think it was enough people that went downtown. The county did decide to reevaluate. And so just to give you an example, the adjacent property, which, it is a bigger square footage, but it started out at like 684,000 and it has since dropped to 477,000. So basically to get there is they did realize that, some things weren't looked at quite right. They did realize that these things were tear downs, and that set the price, and that, people aren't going to pay for the improvement that's on the property because it would make the land value then too high. They wouldn't be able to make money on building a house. So basically the values are too high. So when they went back and reevaluated, they barely moved the land prices. So land prices went from 425 down to 400,000. And the way they justified the numbers is they played with the numbers on the structures, which is good. It hurts the vacant lots, but there's only 3, maybe 4 vacant lots. We just so happen to own one of them. There's 2 adjacent to me that are vacant, and that might be it. There might be one additional vacant lot that hasn't already been purchased or split under all of this stuff. So things are definitely going to be slowing down moving forward. As an owner in this development, we felt like that the county could have kind of went and made it right. They could have put a lower value on the land, and then the structure for all these new houses that came in could have had a higher square foot, a dollar number put on them, and it would have came right out to the sale price. But instead, I guess their case is they would go with a high land value, and then they basically derate the houses. It makes sense on all the existing houses when you're dealing with houses that are, built 1970 or earlier. They're going to get demoed, and it doesn't matter. On the spreadsheet we can go look at, we got houses up to over 2,700 square feet that they're demoing just because of the status of it. They want to build some, 4,000 to 55, maybe 3,500 to 5,500 square foot house. But basically, the houses in this area are marked down really low. And I'm not talking about the houses that are going to be demoed when new people buy in. I'm talking about the brand new houses are on the low end of the spectrum, which is a way to justify a higher land price. That way, the combination. So anybody that's new moving into the neighborhood, nobody's going to have a problem with the valuations because it comes out to the total. Who cares if the land is high or low, if the house is high or low? Nobody really cares because the total price is the same. Who gets burned is the people that have been in the neighborhood, for 20 years. There was a lot of older people. The neighborhood is definitely getting younger. A lot of older people on fixed incomes. They're the ones getting burned because, now they've got this higher land value just based on the way this demo goes. And they did, I will say, the county did go in. They adjusted most of these properties to reflect the fact that they are going to tear down. So they did go in, even on our adjacent properties of myself and Clark, they adjusted the structures to help make it closer to what a true value should be. So they did lower the structure to try to offset it. They just, because the land value was so high, they had to leave a certain value on the structure. And it puts us above what the true value is in the neighborhood. So that's just kind of a little bit more of a recap on the neighborhood. So have a couple area views. On page 6, which is our exhibit 4, I'm just trying to define the neighborhood. As Robert said, Mr. Adden said, the neighborhood is in close proximity to a Cotswold little shopping center, grocery store, a few small stores. It is in close proximity to downtown Charlotte. It is in close proximity to South Park Mall. There is a YMCA that's not too far away. So it does have some of those features. What it doesn't have, it does not have curbs on the streets. It does have gutters. So starting on my page 6, I do show you can see gutters. You can see some pipes that run under the driveways, but there's a lot of flooding issues in this neighborhood, some of which was taken into account on some of these properties that are close. But the street we're looking at here is Hunter, which is, perpendicular to the creeks, and it basically floods into the yard. So some of these houses, I don't think they didn't get adjustments, even though there's flooding on this road vertical. Page 7 kind of shows another street, which is parallel with the creek, page 7 and 8, and you can see how it floods on page 8. So a lot of flooding in this. I don't have a problem paying a fair price. Fieldview is the parcel that we're talking about. There's no flooding on Fieldview. So these pictures are pointing out how the area is. I mean, the area does not have curbs. It is in close proximity, so it is a highly sought after area. My point on this, you'll see later, is that there are some adjacent areas that are just as important or just as sought after as this neighborhood. So when we get to that, I just want you to just kind of keep that in mind. So when we get there, we'll point out a few things that show some similarities and, show some discrepancies on pricing. So basically, that next little group of pages was just that. So we come to basically page 11, which is, our first spreadsheet. And I did want to kind of go through some of the numbers, that point out. Now, what's not shown on this one, which we'll look at, when I get to closing, is I didn't even list the 2015, which is when all the split lots started. And as you can see, 2016, my line item 9, 10, and 11, looks like most of the split lots, stopped in 2016, which was basically when the neighborhood was able to get the county to rescind this tree ordinance. And this tree ordinance was not put in place for an existing neighborhood. It was put in place for a new neighborhood because the way builders were doing new neighborhoods, they were just clear cutting the whole thing, having no aesthetics to it and just building houses. What I want to point out on here is a couple of these values, because it is a couple of them that, are being used by the county. So line item number 1, it is one of the higher values. It is in 2018. It's in the county's exhibits. It's $434,000. It was purchased in June of 2018. They overpaid. They were caught on the back end of this whole tree ordinance thing. They purchased this property. They thought they were going to turn a profit, and they weren't able to do it. So now here we are, October of 2020. They finally got a buyer for this price. So they paid $434 in June of 2018, and they had to sit on it until October of 2020. And because of the location of this, I had to talk to that owner a good many times because he was trying to figure out how to get his money out. And he was our particular street, Fieldview Avenue, has a covenant on it, and you cannot split the lots. I don't know if this one didn't quite qualify for a split lot anyhow, but there's restriction on garages and things like that. He was trying to build some large house. He couldn't make the numbers work. So he had it on the market since probably there's been a sign in the yard since end of 2016. Since the end of 2018, he had a sale sign in the yard, couldn't sell it. So he finally got it sold. They just started construction in October 2020. So I feel like that was a high price paid. They got caught on the wrong end of the stick, and then they had to sit on it. The next one, line item number 3, is $419,000.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, are we still in a brief opening statement?
No, we're in the evidence.
Okay,
now.
we're in the evidence. Okay, thank you.
You bet. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Griffith,
yes,
make sure the numbers you're talking about let us know if you're talking about the numbers up top or the numbers below.
Okay,
I think you said number one, but that's actually, I guess, your lot. And
yes, number
two
one is my lot. So I'm on line item number 3. And as you can see, I've got number 3 listed. It shows the property. And then down in the notes below, I also listed number 3. That way they go together. So you can kind of see the notes on that particular property. That is one right there. That's the only one that I feel like where you actually had somebody come in and buy something and made something work. So I feel like you had one buyer that came into this neighborhood. You know, if you wanted to use something to base land off of, you've got this one particular one. It is the only thing that really makes any sense to be used. And I don't feel like if you got one buyer that comes in and buys something that you then go in and you change everybody's, lot values. So that's one. If you drop down line item number 4, it's a 2018 purchase is $345. Granted, it's on a creek, so they did give some concessions there. Still it was a $345 purchase. We can skip the 2019s. Only reason I have the 2019s on there, it does make a thing that shows that this whole 425 is some magical number that should have been a land versus structure, because you got people in 2019 buying these houses and living in them at 425. It basically means they're living in these really nice houses. The square footages are not that large, but the insides are unbelievable. And as a matter of fact, on one of those, they even attach some pictures if we want to look at. I mean, they got hardwoods, granite countertops, the whole works. But there's basically no value in the house because they've got the land at, for this particular one, they got the land at $400,000. So, you got more people now, you got people buying and living in the houses, but yet the values are still only $425, even when they were tearing them down. So basically, they're getting a structure that is worth nothing, when they're living in them.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
This is Commissioner Guest. Before you move on, may I ask you a question?
Yes.
A moment ago, you were talking about line item number 3.
Yes.
You indicated that was a vacant piece of property when it was purchased?
No, it was not.
They have the land on that valued at $419,000?
Well, $419 is what the individual paid for the land, which is 0.55 acres, and it had a 2,700 square foot house on it.
Okay.
They paid $419 and they tore it down. So
you indicated that you felt that was a good comparison for the county to use to value the land values in your neighborhood. Is that correct?
I'm saying that the county is definitely using that. What I'm saying is, I don't think it is justified to take this one particular case, which according to that, I feel like you got a buyer that paid more than what they should have paid, and they're moving in there and tearing it down. So based on the county's use of this extraction method, then, according to that, I guess they could say the land is worth $419, even though nobody's going to pay anything over $425 in the neighborhood. They're using that. So what I'm saying is, if we're going to define that market extraction can be held accountable for a neighborhood, one single purchase, then I would think that across the board for similar neighborhoods. So my point is, if that is the case, the county is using one example that I feel is justified for their case to set a whole entire neighborhood that's got over 100, parcels in it. And I don't think that's fair to take one particular one. You take the 4911 that we purchased, we overpaid for the property, and I'm willing to overpay for it because we paid $285. I'm saying it's only worth $277. We paid $285 for it, but they're coming in putting 5,000 square foot houses I got a little single story, on the side. I didn't want some 5,000 square foot house, beaming down, smothering me. So we paid whatever it took. We had like a first right of refusal on the property, the 4911. And what we ended up doing is, I think the appraiser, the real estate agent kind of got us because she wanted to sell it to a builder. And the owner was pushing her that she needed to do this, needed to abide by this first right of refusal, even though it wasn't written. It was a verbal first right of refusal. So I really feel like she kind of stuck it to us, and she kept driving the price because our initial price was like $225 on it based on the way all the split lots were going. And so we went from $225 up to $285 just to get it done because that's what she kind of held our feet to.
Okay. Two quick questions for you. I thought you had said that you thought item number 3 was a good comparison. I did not realize you were saying the county thought that.
Yes.
I understand that now. Okay. Secondly, you indicate now that you purchased your lot and paid $285.
Yep.
When did you purchase your lot?
Maybe it was 2014.
That's fine. That's all I needed. It wasn't it was years ago. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Griffin.
All right. So, a few other of these. There's another one. Let's see. It's, you can look down here at the 2016. So it's our line item number 9, 10, and 11. Those are 2016 split lots. You have one that, they paid $400,000. So that would make each lot worth $200,000. You have one they paid $425,000. That would make each lot worth $500. And all these purchases were land and structure. They demoed the structure. They were left with the land. They split it under that tree ordinance, would make it $212,500. The one that does throw things out, which I'll point out, line item number 11, they paid $700,000. There again, this was a very deep lot, and the builder paid $700,000. He thought he was going to put 3 houses on it. He was going to put a street that went from Wonderwood, and it went into the property. He thought he was going to put it on the edge of the property going into the property, and then he was going to split it into 3 lots. So you were going to have 3 lots, like one house behind the other going backwards, and he was going to put a road in. Well, he couldn't make that work, so then he was stuck with 2 lots, which puts those at $350,000 a lot. So that's why that one's so much higher. Because you go back to the 2015, we'll look at that, when I get to the closing argument. All the 2015s, are.
Mr. Griffin, let me ask you a question. I think I know, but I want to make sure. You were talking about 9, 10, and 11 being split. And the acreage there goes 0.82, 0.65, 0.90. Your lot is 0.38. So are you saying that the bigger lots then get split into the size like your lot? Is that how
There you go.
The price per lot under assessed building over on the almost far right? Is that what you're saying there?
That is correct.
Okay.
So under that acreage, theirs will get split, and they're going to be basically like, my lot.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up.
And then there was one other house on here that, same thing. It was on, another one on Hunter Lane. So you have the 200 Hunter Lane, and then you have the 343 Hunter Lane, which is, line item number 8. Same thing. Line item number 8, $410,000. They purchased in 2016, and they were stuck with it. I do not know when the tree ordinance was rescinded, if they got caught right outside, or if they just didn't investigate the area and they say all these prices going in that neighborhood and they just decided to buy it. But they just started construction in December of 2020. So they had to sit on it for 4 years, a sell sign in the yard from the get-go, within 6 months after they purchased it, and they couldn't get it sold. So, I don't see how you can use that number when they had to sit on it for 4 years. I mean, that right there says they paid too much for it. So that's my point on there is that I feel like, the split lots, because of what was going on in the neighborhood, it should have been looked at more as a split lot instead of a tear down. And then, you have a few things, but, that were purchased in the 400,000 range, but then they had to sit on them because they paid too much. So the only one that I feel like, makes the county's case is line item number 3, just because it was tore down and the builder did build on it. So that's my exhibit 5. I don't know if if we need to look, if you look at page 12, it at least kind of shows a layout of, the houses that are in that spreadsheet. It just kind of shows you the location. And you can even look at it. If you look at page 12, you can go over on the Wonderwood Street, you can look at house number 11. They have 2 little small houses. You can look at number 9 and or say number 10, which is down near the front right. And what they did is, the other thing that's aggravating is that the owners at number 10, if you're looking on page 12, you can see where I've got a number 10 circled. There's 2 houses side by side. It was a split lot. Well, they get valued at even a smaller lot. They might not even be 0.3. They get valued at a smaller lot because the builder put this crazy tree ordinance thing. And evidently this is, owned by I don't know if it's owned by the street or the county or what, but they do split taxes on it, but they don't charge taxes for it. It's like it's under those owners' name as some tree association, and they don't even pay taxes on it. So I'm like, hey, can we put block off an area on this particular property and, call it tree safe, to match up for all these other people who, bought these split lots under a tree ordinance. So that's the only thing on the map. All the rest of them are just some of the houses that were referenced in the spreadsheet and, some comp sheets and pictures. If we need to, we can come back. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think the county is going to object to anything that's in the spreadsheet. But if we need to, we can, come back to that. So I think with that, we can go to exhibit number 6, which starts on page 24. And what we'll do is we'll just hold 24. We'll come back to it. We'll look at page 25. So basically, this is a neighborhood that is right across the street from our neighborhood. So my only point is with these 2 neighborhoods, they're within, you can even see, I put it on page 25. They're 1 mile apart. I've notated from the 4911 field view plot over to this. And you can see on page 25, all the little asterisks across the street. And these are all properties in a similar manner, maybe not quite as extreme as what, was going on over on the Hunter Wonderwood area. What I do want to point out is, kind of going back to the Glasgow case, it looks like the board is saying that, that the market extraction technique is justifiable if you have multiple cells. So now what are we calling multiple cells? Because I feel like over on the field, on the Hunter Lane Wonderwood side, I feel like technically we got 1 cell, of something that justifies what the county is trying to present. And over here, we have more than 1 cell. So if we go back to page 24, we can look at it. So basically, these started in 2014. So line item number 5, which is 3410 Fielding Avenue. It was purchased in June of 2014, and it was a demo sale. It was a tear down, and they rebuilt. So basically, they paid $336,500, tore down the house, rebuilt it. Land gets valued at 250. If you go over to the right-hand column, it's third from the right, the 2019, basically everything over here is assessed at 250,000. And then you adjust the house value to make it, all work out. So these houses are technically, per square footage should probably be maybe a little bit more than the Hunter Wonderwood. They are brick construction, but brick construction probably only adds $5 a square foot. I mean, versus Hunter Wonderwood seems to have a lot of hardy plank, seems to be the outside construction. But number 5 was $336,500. Then number 7, 1316 Kings Cross, they paid $282,000 in 2014, and it was a tear down. And they built an 8,000 square foot house. So they get a $250,000 piece of land, and they got a $2 million house, which is the second column from the right. So you got 2 tear downs, and then number 8 and 9 is a split lot, which was done in 2018, which is what, the 3 houses over on the Hunter Lane Wonderwood, they're really using that 2018 to make their case. So, here's a split lot 2018. So, what do we want to define multiple sales as, and why in this area? In this area, I even attached, a picture, which would be page 27, that shows it has curb and gutter. So it's a nicer area. It has curbs in it. There's no flooding water issues in the neighborhood. And it is in the exact same proximity to Cotswold, to South Park, to downtown Charlotte. But, for whatever reason, it was not selected as one that, let's ramp up, the land values. I feel like Hunter and Wonderwood, they saw all these sales, which all these sales were split lots, and they said, hey, we got enough sales here, we can justify this market extraction. Whereas I feel like it should have been a split lot is how they should. I mean, I guess I'm having a hard time understanding when somebody pays for a piece of land and a house and they demo the house and split the lot. Why would that not be the value of the land? I mean, if they pay $500,000 for it, that means each land should be worth $250,000. But kind of where I'm at on that. So Exhibit 6, right across Randolph. So now we can go to Exhibit 7, which starts on 45. Granted, leading up to page 45 is just comps that are based on this particular spreadsheet. So if we jump over to 45, that'll give us the spreadsheet. Kind of hold that. Page 46 shows the location. 2.4 miles away from Fieldview. It's in Lansdowne. It is in a very similar area. Whether or not you actually call it Lansdowne, Lansdowne's right there. Basically there's this one street, Jefferson Drive, and it's happening in the other area, but I just focused on Jefferson Drive because it seemed to have the most activity. It's in the same proximity to Cotswold. It's actually a little closer to South Park Mall, 2.4 miles out further from Charlotte. So, focusing on another area, it's got curb and gutter on half the street. Half the street does not have curb and gutter. So I did kind of have a picture of the curb and gutter, which is on half the street. The other half doesn't. None of these 3 areas have sidewalks. So, I feel like there are 3 areas that really compare closely together. And there again, my point is, why was Hunter and Wonderwood arbitrarily selected to be an extraction method and then not in these other areas where the exact same thing is going on? And why Hunter Wonderwood was not based on split lot sales? So if we look at these, line items 2 through 6 were all land structure and purchases. Tear down the house, And then, these are 2015, 2016, 2017. And these are all valued at $175,000 for the land, third column from the right. Now what happens on the other end, if you go back and look at the map, which is, if you want to look on page 47, it shows the layout. So the first few houses, in reference to this drawing on the right-hand side of the street, the last one was a split lot sale, which is on the left side. There's a little pond. I do not know if the pond was built as part of the split lot or if the pond was already there. I can't comment on that, but I don't think it makes a difference. If you go back to 45, the spreadsheet, they paid $800,000 in 2017 and split it into 5 lots. The smallest of which is 0.243. A little bit smaller than, our lot, which is at the 0.384, but nonetheless 0.243. Based on the 800,000, you're basically would be averaging $160,000 a lot, which could be bumped up to 175 to make it comparable to the entire street. But I guess this little part maybe got treated like the Hunter Lane Wonderwood area, and they just randomly decided to come out with 276,000 for the lots. I don't know exactly where that came from, but that's a difference of the owner purchasing the property for 800,000, and now all of a sudden, because they split it, it's worth 1.3 million approximately. So there again, starting in the same time frame as 2016 to 2018, which is the same for Fieldview, which is the same for Rutledge Avenue. 2016 to 2018, it's going on right there on that street, and nothing's going on. So, I sat there and made, comparisons. I mean, according to this, the lot over on Fieldview, according to this one, should be 175,000. To match up all the rest. You go back to the Rutledge Avenue, it should be 250,000. We get to my closing. I mean, you can say, show I'm 277, which is higher than both of these two areas. And I'll show you why in my closing that I feel like, it's 277. So that's Exhibit 7. You can see the location. You can see the houses on the map. And then the rest of them are just basically comps and pictures of the houses. I mean, they're nice houses. They're the same kinds of houses that are built in our neighborhood. Maybe some of them are slightly better. They have brick, $5. They could be a little bit more, but, basically, it's they're balancing between how much do they want to say the houses are worth versus the land. So for whatever reason, our land got classified as a high dollar amount, and all the new construction houses got a low dollar square foot. These other two areas got a low valuation on land, and they get a high valuation on the structure that's on the land. So, that's my point on that.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
This is Commissioner Wheeler. In your discussion here and the methodology you're questioning the county using, if you, Mr. Harbaugh, I understood from what you said, you purchased the lot for protection from another house being built on it.
Yes.
What do you think would happen to the value of your land if the two of you split the lot and recombined it with your existing homes? What do you think would happen to the value?
It would be bad. So, I would want to do that. We wanted to do that. Our problem is our particular street, the Fieldview Road, the whole entire street was owned by one owner. And when he decided to sell off the land, he put a covenant in place that affects 9 properties, affects everything on that property. Plus there's one up Hunter a little bit that's got a new constructed house that basically said none of these lots can be split. So I would, if it was my preference, I would split it and just made me have a bigger lot. And then it would have done nothing to the value of my property. My property, if I could merge half of that lot into my lot, I would still be at the same exact valuation on the 4901, which is where I live. You know, unfortunately, they got it valued at 477. It should be valued at 425, but that'll be a hearing for another day. You add that land to mine, it's still going to be the same price. It's still going to be purchased for 425. It's going to go from 0.73 acres. It's going to add, you know, half of 0.38, roughly 0.2. So maybe I get up to 0.9, but it's going to be, it'll be roughly, you'll get the same price. I'm not going to get some kind of exorbitant amount more. I mean, maybe they can build a 6,000 square foot house, but because it's on a cul-de-sac, you get bound on a, you know, some of the sides and the back, as far as what they call the sides and the back, as far as, you know, building some kind of structure. So we can't split it under the covenant agreement. So that's another thing that kind of gets, I guess, screws up paying two taxes because we can't split it.
You couldn't split it and recombine it. I mean, I understand splitting it would render it unbuildable
That's correct.
if
But
you combine it with your current properties that you own.
according to the covenant, no lots can be split. And this is not necessarily just, you know, splitting, because according to that, you couldn't split that lot anyhow. So, you know, I know they say you can't split lots, and there was some lots, you know, that were bigger that, you know, I guess you could end up possibly getting two houses, but, you know, that particular lot would have never been under classification of any type to be split to begin with. But definitely our covenant has it where we cannot split lots. Because
All right,
that would be the most beneficial to me, because then I would be under normal tax rates. I'm paying for now 0.9. And even if it was more, it wouldn't be, you know, according to the county, $380,000 more.
all right. Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. Peasley.
How many lots are under that covenant?
9. If you want to go back, I can show you. Let's
No,
see.
I'm just curious about the number, because 9 covenants or 9 properties, you know, if all the property owners get together, you could probably get rid of the covenant, but that's another issue.
You could, and we kind of, you know, because of, I guess, the tenants that are on there, it's now kind of interesting because one of them wanted to kind of do away with the covenant. I think there's some of us there that trying to avoid some of these monster houses on our street that then makes, you know, so basically everything on Fieldview, there's 3 houses on Fieldview that are closer toward the cul-de-sac. And, you know, we're just all smaller 1-story house, you know, so these new constructions, they do kind of tower over the top of you. I got one in my backyard now that, you know, I feel like I need a 30-foot wall so that they're not looking right on top of me. But, you know, and they build them right up to the code requirement of how close they can get to the backyard property line. So, you know, we've kind of avoided the issue of trying to cancel this covenant just because there are 2 lots that are adjacent on the other side of the street from the 4911 that, you know, we prefer not to be, you know, 2 houses on these 2 big lots would look pretty good. You know, 3 or 4 houses are going to look crammed in there, and it takes away the appeal of the neighborhood. You know, they just come in and they clear cut everything. They take out all these established trees. So nobody's really pushed to try to knock this covenant out.
All right, Mr. Griffin.
But it would definitely make it at that point unbuildable. So I guess with that, you know, we can kind of go to my closing arguments, which do start on page 76.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
I'm sorry, before you go into
Yes.
closing arguments, this is Commissioner Guest. Are there any differences in the 3 that you noticed? You pointed out 3 neighborhoods for comparables.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
Are there any, other than the curbs, are there any other differences in municipal services, water, anything that would make these different?
All
about-
city water, city sewer.
Is anyone in a better or more desirable school district?
I would say, well, maybe on there. So, the Rutledge Avenue and the Hunter Wonderwood are zoned for Myers Park right now. The Jefferson, there's a good chance they could be zoned for South Mech. I'm not going to say that 100%, but there were some tweakings of the lines. So, South Mech, I mean, according to what I know, maybe that could provide some kind of discount. I wouldn't think it would provide a discount from 380 down to 175 to go to South Mech versus Myers Park, but that could be one difference for sure.
Thank you.
The Avenue should be Myers Park, the same as the other, but the Jefferson, which is a little further away, could potentially be South Mech.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Griffin, when you say closing, you'll get a time for your closing argument. You're talking about just how you're closing your original testimony. Is that what you're saying?
That is, but let me point out I'll point out one thing, which won't necessarily be the close, and I'll kind of recap on some stuff. On page 81, if we can look at, it is more of a full-blown chart. And it does show in column, number 4, it shows, I went all the way back to 2015. It shows the split lots. You can see from 2015 to 9 to September 2016, I mean, it was mostly split lots. And then, from there, kind of throughout the tree ordinance, and then people had to, they were kind of in this gray area, and I don't know exactly when the tree ordinance got rescinded, but a few lots. But basically my number is, the 277 is basically an average. If you look at the right hand column, I basically took line items 1 through 5, I took 8 through 12. I even threw in the counties number 15, which is at 419, and the 345, which is line item number 18. So that puts 12 properties. That puts 8 split lots and 4 single lots. You average all those prices together, it comes out to 277,000. So that was kind of where I came up with the 277. I threw out line item number 13. As you can see over in the right-hand column, it took 4 years to find a buyer. 14 I put just because they are living in the house. They paid $460, the land's $400, so they got almost a 2,600 square foot house for $60,000. It's $24 a square foot. I did not use line item 16 because it's a live-in. Just kind of showed you what that house is worth. And I did not use line item number 17 because it took 2 years to find a buyer for that lot. So kind of shows that they overpaid for that one. I used the rest of them, and that averaged out to 277. So with that, then I'll be my closing, which will show, some of these exhibits, that chart, plus there's a few charts, prior to 81.
All right.
So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to you or the county.
So let me see now, what else do you want us to consider, if anything, in your evidence? You're at the stage of presenting all your evidence at this time, basically. And then
So, all right, so
going to
not,
cross-examine you. So this is your chance to present your evidence, and then you'll get a chance for closing arguments.
okay, all right, then I have a little bit more then. I guess I kind of had it in my closing. So let me, I'll point out a couple things then. Just as my kind of thing. So if we go back to page 77, it's kind of 77, page 77 and page 81. They both deal with the Hunter Lane Wonderwood. And as you saw on page 81, I took 12 properties, the split lots, because I feel like it should have been a split lot based on the way it went, and the fact that several of these should be thrown out because nothing happened, and it leaves you with the 419. that the county will definitely use for their case. You know, even the worst case I told you about, if you look on page 77, I told you about line item number 11, which was 300. That was a split lot, 350, but that was one they were trying to get 3 lots and they only ended up with 2 lots. So that's, if you go to page 78, you know, what I'm presenting on 78, you know, basically all these lots are valued at $250,000. And in the far right-hand column, I put which this kind of goes with all the additional pages from 81 up to 126. They're just comps on these that are on these spreadsheets if we have to go back and check something. But basically they're at a $188 a square foot average on the houses. So this is where some of the whole land can be moved down, because then they just, you know, it's randomly you decide what you want to make the house to try to make the sale price work out. So 188 on the structure, this is the Rutledge Avenue, which is across the street. 188 on the structure, 250 on the land. So I don't see why our property couldn't be 250. If you go to page 79, this is kind of a recap on the Jefferson Drive. There again, 175 for half the street. You basically, and if you want to go down and look at the very bottom in the highlighted yellow, you can see the 5 tear down houses, the 411 to 532. The land is 175 and they make the houses $247 a square foot. If you look at the split lot, they make those houses only 129 a square foot and they bump the land up to 256. So here you got one street that's, you know, blocks apart that I feel like you're playing with the numbers. The houses are all brick. They are smaller square footages, but that doesn't change the value of what goes into the house when you got a brick construction and the finishes that are inside it. So, you know, I feel like that, even at worst case, if you're taking that, I mean, the property's 276.3. If you want to look at the top line item 9, 10, 11, those 3 houses, those 3 lots are 276,300. So, you know, I feel like with what's going on in Hunter and Wonderwood, you take an average, it's 277. You take Rutledge, it's, you know, it's 250. And even if we throw out the 175s, you're 276 over here on Jefferson. And, you know, the difference being is to get to the sale price, you play with the value of the house. So there's no rhyme or reason on the house. And, you know, that's fine. I understand that. But, you know, if you go back to the field view, which will be on page 80, the field view houses are 160. So, you know, they could have easily, I mean, these are brand new houses. These are, you know, the 160 is not based on all these tear down houses. The 160 is on brand new houses that are built. They get a value 160 to work with the $400,000 land prices. So that is, you know, kind of my proof here is that, you know, these are same areas. We got a difference maybe on schooling in one, but same areas where, you know, they decided to use the market extraction method on ours, and they decided to do just comparable sales in the other 2. I don't quite understand the difference there. I feel like the 3 areas should be consistent, and, you know, the value of the land should be, you know, somewhere in the middle of all that, but a decent amount lower than the $380,000 that they're proposing.
All right. Anything else before the
That's
county?
it. I'll save the rest, I guess, yeah, for closing.
All right. Let me ask this, Mr. Adden, how long do you think your cross-examination will be?
I never like to give estimates, Your Honor, but I'll, about 30 minutes.
All right. Let's see. It's 10 minutes after, it's about 10 minutes after 10. That takes us to 10:30. Do any of the commissioners need a break now, or you want to go through this? If anybody needs a break now, put up your hand or say something. All right, then we'll go ahead with Cross, Mr. Adden.
Mr. Griffin, you started out by talking about how, beginning, I think, about in 2015, your area became very highly desirable by builders. Is that right?
That's correct.
And the tree save ordinance, just a little clarification, that's the city of Charlotte tree save ordinance, not Mecklenburg County, correct?
Could very well be. I do not disagree with you.
Now, and so between 2015 and the revaluation date of January 1, 2019, you would agree that the prices of lots and houses in your neighborhood increased during that period of time?
Based on the value of the split lots, they were, yeah, those split lot values were higher than the original values.
You agree that even lot values were increased also between 2015 and January 1, 2019?
Yeah, I think you can see through the split lots, they range from 210 to 250,000 on the split lots. Yeah, which is an increase.
And so you contend the value of your lot should be 277,000, correct?
Yes, based on the average of the 12 listed in the spreadsheet.
And yet, on December the 23rd, 2015, that's when you actually purchased the house for the lot for 285,000.
That is correct.
So you think between the time you bought the house in December the lot in 2015, December 2015, that your lot actually went down in value, even though the area was going up in value. Is that your testimony?
The testimony is that I felt like the lot at the time was valued at 220, which is what we offered, and to keep it, we overpaid so that we didn't have somebody towering over the top of us. But it felt like it was 220, which is what we offered the owner at the time.
And I think you said earlier in some of your testimony, you referred to some of these buyers overpaid for lots. Is that your testimony? You recall that testimony?
Yes, overpaying for lots. Yes.
Yeah. Now,
that are still trying to build houses 4 years later.
Let's look at your exhibit that is page 81, because page 81 and 82, that exhibit, that's sort of a summary of all these other exhibits that you testified about. Is that correct?
Let's see, 81. That's
81 and 82.
It is kind of, it was kind of moving toward close and trying to get a summary, which is, where I did showed all the split lots just for the, how it came about that it became desirable because of the split lot.
Now, let's take a look at these sales. These are all sales of either vacant lots or houses and lots that were.
No. So there are no vacant lot sales.
Well, wasn't
And look, mine was a vacant lot sale. My bad.
Now, let's look at 2015. Line items 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 6 are all sales in 2015, correct?
Yeah, 2 through 6, yes.
2 through 6 are sales that occurred in 2015, which is more than 3 years prior to the reval date. And
yes,
where on the far right, where it says notes, that's your determination of the price per lot, correct?
That's correct.
And so in 2015, the price per lot in your neighborhood was it went from 192,000 up to 350,000, correct?
Yes.
And then in 2016, we have lots, say numbers 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are all 2016 sales, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's a little bit over 2 years prior to the reval date of January 1, 2019, correct?
Yes.
And you calculated the sales there between 205,000 and 350,000, correct?
Yeah, and keeping in mind that the 350, they kind of got burned because they were trying to do 3 lots. So it kind of puts that group all up in the same boat, but yes.
But in 2015, the high lot sale was 350, and in 2016, by your own calculation, the high lot sale was 350, correct?
Based on what they were stuck with, yes.
Okay. And then we have just one sale in 2017, which is number 14. And number 14 is a property at 201 Wonderwood that sold on August 11, 2017 for $460,000.
Yes.
Now, and so you didn't calculate a value of the lot on that, did you?
Well, the fact that it was a live-in, what I used was, I said, okay, since the county's got it at 400,000, then I guess that makes this, this nice 55 square foot house worth $24 a square foot.
Yeah, the county assessed value on the land of that $460,000, the sale price was $460,000. The county allocates $400,000 to the land on that, correct?
Yes.
And then
that should have been lower, and then the house should have been higher. But either way,
in your opinion, that's your opinion, correct?
Well, according to the county, because improvement definitely doesn't, based on the Glasgow case, doesn't make any matter to what the price is.
Now, you're not an appraiser, are you?
No, sir.
You don't have any appraiser training?
No, sir.
Haven't taken any appraisal courses?
No, sir.
Not certified by the state of North Carolina Department of Revenue to give appraisal testimony?
No, sir.
Now, then we get to items 15, 16, 17, and 18 are all sales in 2018, correct?
All right, say that again, sorry.
Items 15, 16, 17, and 18 are all
Yes.
2018 sales.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one, number 15, was a sale of $419,000 on October 4th, 2018. And that was a
Yes.
tear down, correct?
That is correct.
So a buyer in October 2018, 3 months prior to the reval date, paid $419,000 for this property to tear down the house and then build a bigger house on it, correct?
That is correct. As I said before, I said that one right into y'all's arsenal. That's a good one for you, for sure.
And is that one where you say the buyer paid too much?
That one saying yes, an exception to the norm.
Okay. Then the next item, number 16, is a sale on May 29, 2018, where the county, where the buyer paid $575,000 for that. And the county has the land assessed at $360,000. And the remainder, I guess, would be the value of the 2,200 square foot house, correct?
Yes, $98 a square foot, yes.
And then we have the number 17 is a sale on June 26, 2018. So about 6 months prior to the reval date, a sale for $434,000. And that was a tear down, correct?
Yes.
So in June of 2018, somebody paid $434,000 for a lot in your neighborhood and then to tear down that house.
Yep, put a sell sign and it set up there until 2020.
And then on December 5th, 2018, there was a sale of $345,000, and that also was a tear down, correct?
That is correct.
So we got a sale, so we got a 409 in 2018. Number 15 was a $419,000 tear down. Number 17 was a $434,000 tear down. And number 18 was a $345,000 tear down, correct?
Yes, all tear down.
And despite the fact that you got those three sales within 6 months of the reval date, you contend that those sales should not be used to set your value, because you contend the value should only be $277,000.
Not quite. I contend, I said the 419 is included in, but what I said is because of the way it went with the whole split lot sale, I averaged in from 2015 to 2018, and I put in the 419 and the 345 to come out with the average. And I excluded the live-ins because, you know, unless somebody wants to justify what those properties are, but I did leave those in there. I just excluded a couple where they sat on the property because they couldn't sell it.
So let me make sure I'm clear on this. Your method of valuation of this lot is to, out of 17 properties that you have listed on page 81, I believe you said you excluded 13, 14, 16, and 17. You excluded 4 of those sales, correct?
That is correct.
You just chose those 4. You got reasons for it, but you decided, I'm not going to use these 4 sales. I'm going to use the others. And then you just took an average to come to 277,000.
That is correct.
Now,
And I was just I'm just taking an average of this neighborhood just to show a comparison also to the other 2 neighborhoods where it is clearly defined by the county what the land values are.
what recognized appraisal method did you use to determine the value of your property?
Comparable sales, split lot sales.
And how did you do it? You just testified you took an average of 13 sales, right?
That's correct.
And then in comparing the sales, what differences in the properties did you take into account when you reviewed your property with these other your comps? What difference? You didn't take into differences into account, did you?
And what do you mean by what do you?
If you're going to do the sales method and you're going to compare your property to a comp, you got to look at similarities and you got to look at differences. So what differences did you take into account in making adjustments for these sales?
Basically, the differences was just on the size of the lots. I know there's credits taken. I was just trying to do a base value. There's credits taken for houses that are over on the creek, but you know, just a baseline, you know, just coming up with a baseline method.
The fact is, you didn't make any adjustments to the sale prices, did you?
No, I
You took the sale prices as is.
That's correct.
And you did not look to determine or make any adjustments for whether there were differences between your lot and any of these lots.
I'm not sure by what you mean by differences. I mean, as far as I'm making a comparison on location and square and acreage. I'm not sure what else.
But you didn't make any adjustments for location, did
No, based on the sale price.
you? Right. You didn't make any adjustments at all to the sale prices.
That is correct.
Let me interrupt here for 1 second, see if I can clarify something in my mind, Mr. Griffin. Are any of these sales that are listed, are they vacant lot sales themselves after the tear downs and then the lots were sold? Do we have any of those to compare the sales prices, which is your lot is vacant? Do we have any of these sales of vacant lots?
So as far as vacant lots, so there were no original vacant lot sales prior, except for mine. And then after they sold them, most of them were builders. So, you know, they basically were selling, I guess, a lot and a structure all in one. I know the one on Hunter Lane was definitely. There are going to be some moving forward that might have been mid 2019, mid 2020, where they tore them down. And then when they finally were able to find a buyer, it just took 2 to 4 years. So then it comes out, you know, after the whole.
But prior to, during the date that we're looking for the valuation, if I'm hearing you right, there were no vacant lot sales. Once they were bought and then the structures torn down, there were houses built on them, and then the sale took place. Is that what you're saying?
That is my recollection. I'm not gonna say I didn't miss one, but my recollection is everything that I have, there were no sales until of vacant lots after teardowns until, you know, into 2019, 2020.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Ed.
Well, I believe there's a one on Hunter Lane that sold for $434,200, Hunter Lane, number 17. That, the picture, the county's exhibit, I believe your exhibit shows there's no house on that. That's one that sold for $434,000. Is that correct?
No, there was a house on there. The house didn't get demoed until 2020.
Your page 12, if you look at your page 12, there's no house. That's your number 2. That's number 2 on, I guess, one of, and that first page, there's no house on there. Anyway, I'll go on. So, in coming up, in your method of coming up with this $277,000 figure, you did not use any appraisal standards from the Uniform Standards of Appraisal Practice, USPAP, did you?
No.
And you didn't use any standards from the International Association of Assessing Officers, did you?
No. I am not an appraiser.
Now,
Certification.
what evidence do you have that the county violated or deviated from a specific appraisal standard?
Well, let me ask the same question,
No, I get to ask questions. You get to answer the questions.
Oh, so then what was that question? I thought it was a.
What evidence do you have that the county violated or deviated from a specific appraisal standard?
I guess it's got to be answered with a question. I don't know how that needs to work.
Answer it as best as you can.
I feel like the county has a person. I don't know if it's Jeremy Blackwelder. I don't know who appraised the Hunter Lane Wonderwood area, but pretty sure I know if not. There you go. I'm going to use Jeremy as an example because I don't know who looked at that area, but according to the Glasgow case, basically Jeremy answers every single question that you ask me that I am not, which is a certified appraiser, certified by all the different organizations that I don't know that you just mentioned. He is a certified appraiser by the Department of North Carolina Revenue. And basically they went into that area and totally missed the valuations on the properties, which goes back to the original assessments. If you take the 4901 Fieldview Road, which is, 0.7 acres, 2,600 square foot house valued at $684,000 was the first pass so that they could get land values for whatever reason of $425 to match the sales that you pointed out right there for 2018. And it wasn't until after, material was presented by homeowners to the county that they realized that they had missed the valuations on this neighborhood and they had to redo the whole entire thing. but it only brought the land values down to 400,000. So was something missed when they reevaluated a second time?
So you're saying the county just ignored the October 4th, 2018, $419,000 tear down sale, the June 26, 2018, $434,000 tear down sale, and the December 5th, 2018, $345,000 tear down sale? You saying the county just ignored those, or the fact of the matter is that those sales support the county's values?
Yeah, I can't say what the county did. All I know is the county extremely overvalued the properties, and they had to go back in and reevaluate all the properties a second time. I've got 4 letters from the county of 4 different drops in value.
Now, let's go to page 82. That's where you have a summary of the Rutledge Avenue area, which is across Randolph Road from you, correct?
Yes.
So it's not in your exact neighborhood, it's a nearby neighborhood.
Yep, across the street.
Now, that last one, number 22, you have that as a split sale that occurred on January 3rd, 2018 of $545,000, correct?
Yes.
Now look on page 114 of your exhibits. Page 114. And that shows, that's for parcel 185-04245, which is the same parcel number for number 22, correct?
Say that 114 is, yeah,
114.
that's correct. It's for 22.
Okay. And you see there, the deed references and sales price on January 3rd, 2018, there was the sale price of $545, which is what you put on your spreadsheet, correct?
Yep, it's for that one plus
And that was split.
on 116.
That was split, and part of it sold on June the 15th, 2018 for $410,000, correct?
That is correct.
And I guess and so this
And it was
lot
the owner that decided we started building the house.
So the lot of 1406 Rutledge Avenue actually sold for $410,000 in June of 2018.
Yes.
Let me ask for clarification. Was that a vacant lot at that time? So it was an individual?
No, it was a tear down.
So the house was still on it at that time?
Not with the 410. So they bought the lot, they tore the house down, they split the lot, and then when they got a buyer for one half of the lot, they sold it for the 410, which there again, if you want to go with, one, that kind of factored into that side, but I guess they'll use that to set our neighborhood, and then you leave these all at 175.
So I'm confused. Let me see if I can get clarification, Mr. Adden. The sale of this property on 6/15/2018 for $410,000, was that a vacant lot sale after a demolition? And was it just for one half of or what was the size of the lot at that time, I guess? 3.325 acres? It's showing. And was that for $410,000 just for the lot?
Mr. Griffin, that's your testimony.
Yeah.
That was the sale for the lot for 420. The 410,000 was the sale of that 0.325 acre vacant lot, correct?
That is correct. The
Okay.
0.25. So they split the lot, and then they were able to sell it, as they found, I guess, a homeowner.
And they sold it then for $410,000. Is that
Yes.
after it split? Okay, I'm trying. This is confusing with split lots and lots still having tear downs on them.
Yes.
Thank you.
But the point is, the Rutledge Avenue area across Randolph Road from your neighborhood in June of 2018, we had a vacant lot sale for $410,000. Correct? Mr. Griffin?
Yeah, that's it. If you're taking one, yes, one example, yes, 410.
Now, the Jefferson Drive area is Lansdowne subdivision, and that's 2.4 miles away, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And, I just want to clarify a few things now. You had a picture of some flooding. One of your pictures showed some flooding on a street, but that's not on your street. That does not affect your property, correct?
That's it. It's one street over from mine, but it does not affect my property.
Now, if you look at page 81 again, you excluded 4 of those 17 sales, but you said in there, at the very bottom of the page, it's based on the above information, your property should be valued at $350,000 worst case. So if you
I'll
did
put
not
on there
exclude
worst
4
case.
sales, is that how you get an average of 350?
No, that 350, that worst case was just, the benefit of the doubt of that one particular sale that they tried to split into 3 lots, that they only got 2 lots, that makes it 350.
I don't have any other questions.
Mr.
I have
Chairman,
questions from the commissioner, Mr. Guest.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
page 81, lots 15 through 18 that were sold in 2018. This is your neighborhood, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Lot number 15 sold for $419,000. Would this, and it was a tear down,
Yes.
would that property be able to be split, or is that restricted under the covenant?
That cannot be split.
Okay. Lot number 17 sold for $434,000. It was also a tear down, and that also is restricted and cannot be split.
That is correct.
And lot number 18 sold for $345,000. That was a tear down, and it is also restricted and cannot be split.
That is correct.
Thank you very much.
The zoning and not the covenant on my street. It's just the R3 zoning for the neighborhood.
I understand, but you can only build one single family house on those lots because they cannot be split.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Other commissioners have questions? All right, seeing none. Mr. Griffith, you're entitled to present any additional evidence that might have arisen out of those questions from Mr. Adden. Anything else that you want to present at this time?
Is this closing or is this additional evidence?
Well, this is the last of your evidence opportunities based right now until the county. If we get into the county's evidence, then you would have a chance to offer rebuttal to.
Now, the only thing I'll point out, it just goes back to 81, since it looks like, we are going to be, coming down to the nitty gritty. It looks like we're going to be focused on, the 2018, valuations as far as trying to come up with this. My point is, if you go to the, the Glasgow case, which is on page 130, starts on 126, page 5, it's where the board is indicating that, market extraction, is reliable if you have, a multiple sale. So, I think what we're coming down to is, what are we calling, legitimate, sell for the neighborhood to classify the entire neighborhood. And, with that, you got the 419. So you do have one buyer there. The other ones were live-ins, which, the only way you get a land value out of that is what the county decides it should be. But, when you look at the value of the house on a house that they're actually living in, they've really squeezed that number to make it something that, just doesn't seem reasonable. And then on the other ones, the people got into the flurry of activity, thought they were going to make a quick buck, and they bought a couple of these houses, and then they got stuck with them and had to sit on them. So my point is if we're going to take one and we're going to reevaluate the whole neighborhood based on that one or two, how are we not doing it in the other ones? What justifies arbitrarily picking that when you see over there on the Rutledge, they're at 175. So that's it. It's just back looking at that 419, since that seems to be the focus. And I'll do it in my closing. Okay, that's it.
Let me ask you, Mr. Griffin, then we'll see if Mr. Adden has any other questions. The neighborhood that you're in, and the lots are valued at, I guess, 380 for those. And the lots in the other two neighborhoods that you use as comparables, which are valued at substantially lower per lot for tax purposes, it appeared from what you had there for us. What is the differences as far as why those lots are substantially lower than in your neighborhood?
The reason being is our neighborhood was valued down there. It was there, but because they, for whatever reason, I don't, again, as Mr. Adden pointed out, I'm not a certified city appraiser, but what happened is they saw the flurry of activity and they decided to arbitrarily pick ours and use this market extraction method. And so that drove all of our properties. We would have been mimicking the other areas before, and now all of a sudden we're driven up to 380, and the other two areas were not arbitrarily selected to be part of it, even though if you're going to sit there and say multiple houses, determines whether or not you can use market extraction, well, then you should be doing the same thing on the other two areas, because they match up in proximity to stuff. They match up in, levelness of lots. They match up in, acreage. They match up in square footage of houses. So, they're all equal.
Well, were they tear downs in these other two neighborhoods
All up,
similar
yes.
to what was in yours?
That is correct. And you can look at some of the other houses on those streets, the ones that haven't been purchased. I mean, they're small, 2,000 or less, square foot houses. I mean, which is what we were dealing with. I mean, our houses seem to run from 1,300 up to maybe, you might have been up to 2,500, 2,700. And, now all of a sudden everything that's new is 3,500 on the low to 5,500. So that's what got put back in.
Okay, Mr. Adden. Anything else from you?
No.
Okay. Anything else from the other commissioners? All right, I don't see anything. All right, at this time, we've got all the exhibits that have already been admitted from both sides. So at this time, Mr. Adden.
Yeah, Mecklenburg County moves to dismiss the taxpayer's case on the grounds that taxpayers failed to meet his burden. As you know, the county's ad valorem tax assessment is presumptively correct. And the court said that for the purposes of underlying the presumption of correctness arises out of the obvious futility of allowing a taxpayer to fix the final value of his property for ad valorem taxation. If the presumption did not attach, then every taxpayer would have unlimited freedom to challenge the valuation placed upon his property, regardless of the merit of such challenge. In order to rebut the presumption of correctness, he has to show by competent material and substantial evidence that the county used an arbitrary method of valuation or an illegal method of valuation, and that the county's assessed value substantially exceeds the value. Now, the taxpayer has not presented any appraisal evidence that was in the Kenny testimony of appraisal that his method is done by appraisal standards. The taxpayer, Mr. Griffin, simply says he takes 17 sales, many of those sales in 2015 and 2016. He takes these sales, he throws out some of the more recent ones, and then he takes an average to get a value of $277,000. And that $277,000 there's no evidence, no competent evidence to support that. And in fact, the fact that he and Mr. Harbaugh purchased this property for $285,000 in December 2015, so they paid $285,000 for the lot. Values in the neighborhood go up between 2018 and 2019, and yet his property went down. His evidence, his whole evidence, I wrote down some exact quotes from his testimony. And his evidence was, when he talked about file number 3 on exhibit number 5 on page 11, his testimony page 11.
Mr. Griffith, you need to mute your mic, please, while he's talking. We're getting rough
Sorry.
over your papers. Okay.
Number 3 on page 11 is 332 Wonderwood, which was the $419,000 sale on October 4th, 2018. That was a tear down. A $419,000 lot in his neighborhood that was sold 3 months before the valuation date for $419,000. And his testimony was, quote, buyer paid more than it should have paid. Well, that's his opinion that the buyer paid too much. When he was asked about what he and Mr. Harbaugh paid for his lot, quote, we paid whatever it took. Well, we paid whatever it took as a willing buyer and a willing seller. In talking about, I believe this exhibit 5, he mentioned that there were some sales in the $400,000 range, and his exact quote on that was, paid too much. And then when he was talking about exhibit 6, which is on page 24, exhibit 6 was the Rutledge Avenue across Randolph Road from him. He was testifying about that. And then he went back and talked about his neighborhood. He said, I feel like Hunter Wonderwood area, quote, that the county, quote, saw all these sales, enough sales to justify the value. But you know what? He's right. The county did see all these sales to justify the value. If you look at page 81, as Commissioner Guest pointed out, you got in June of 2018 a $434,000 tear down sale. You got in October 2018 a $419,000 tear down, and then in December 2018 a $345,000 tear down. And I would submit to you that that $345,000 tear down, the county has that assessed at $320,000. There are obviously some issues with that lot that are a little different from Mr. Griffin's lot. In fact, if you look at the assessed value on page 81, 2019 tax assessed value, the assessed value from all of these houses, except for that one 320, are $360,000, $380,000, and $400,000. His neighborhood is. We have good sales to support his value, to support the county's value. Now, he talks about the extraction method and that the county only used one sale. Well, that right there is 3 sales. There's 3 sales right there, and actually there are 5 sales because you got the 2017 sale of $460,000, and you got a May of 2018 sale of $575,000. So the extraction method isn't just pick a vacant lot. The extraction method is, as this commission ruled in the Glasgow case, the extraction method is you have a sale. It's a demo sale or a tear down sale. It's the terminology used, where the house that's there when it's bought is torn down, and you extract out that value to get the value of the lot. And that's exactly what the county's done here. And this commission in the July Glasgow case ruled, we find therefore that the market extraction technique, whether labeled as a demo sale, tear down sale, or some similar informal term, is a recognized and logical technique for developing an indication of the market value of land. Mr. Griffin has absolutely no competent, material, relevant evidence that the county's use of the extraction method to determine the value of his lot was illegal or arbitrary. In addition, his own document, page 81, says, worst case scenario, the value of the lot should be $350,000. Well, we got it at 380. Worst case scenario, we're $30,000 apart, so we're less than 10% apart. There's no evidence that $380,000 substantially exceeds true value. He doesn't have an appraisal. He doesn't have bring an appraiser to come in to testify. He doesn't use any accepted appraisal standards to come up with his $277,000, other than taking a bunch of sales, excluding the 2018 sales that are most relevant, most competent, excludes them because they're over $400,000, and those sales support the county's value, and then averages the remaining sales that go all the way back to 2015 to get a low value of 277. The fact that he develops his own method is not sufficient. It's not competent. It's not material. It's not substantial evidence that the county used an illegal or arbitrary method. It's not sufficient to overcome the burden that he has to establish. So I ask that the commission dismiss this case. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Griffin, Mecklenburg County, Mr. Adden has moved to dismiss due to the fact that you hadn't met the burden. We'll hear from you now as to your argument on that point.
All right, well, there again, it looks like we are, focusing on the 2018. So, you're not, what he's saying is we're not looking back all the way to 2015. The whole purpose there is, going back to 2015, is that the whole thing that got them into this area was the split lot sale. So the split lot sale brought the county in to reevaluate this neighborhood. And instead of using the split lot sale, they used a market extraction method, which ran the value of the property up. So where the burden of proof here, so, and he says there's no, certified appraisal method that I use. I mean, the whole purpose of coming here was to try to get something. We have been through the county in Mecklenburg, and it basically gets dismissed immediately. Having said that, we did get the county to reevaluate. So while I have no certifications whatsoever, the county has all the certifications, and yet they still didn't get it right. They went out there and they ran these prices up that then put, tear down house value, property/tear down house value at these extreme numbers just so they could get a land value to try to meet this. You've got 4 sales there. That's fine. You can't count the live-in, so that takes 2 of his sales out. So if you go back to 2017 on page 81, you got a 2017 and a 2018 that are live-in. So there's no way the county hasn't the county didn't use those sales to determine a land value of 400,000 or 380, whatever it is. They used the three other sales. So you throw those out because all they did there is they ran the value of the house that the people are living in to $24 a square foot, $98 a square foot. So the county definitely didn't use that to come up with 400. So now that puts you down to three numbers out of the five that they mentioned. And of the three, two of them, they had a sale sign for 2 to 4 years in the yard. So they buy the lot and they got a sale sign in there trying to make something, they can't sell it. So to me, it goes back down, yes, county has the 419, if that's what you want to do. But where the burden of proof is proven is when you go to page 82. I mean, you got the exact same thing going on. If you want to call one or two houses, you got one or two houses over in the Rutledge area. Everything's the same. It's actually better. It's actually got curves. You go to the Jefferson Drive area, page 82. I mean, it's 175. I don't even care. You go up to the 256. The 380 is just too high. And then what happens is it shows up for all the existing owners, because now what happens is, once they buy the lot and it's a tear down, then, they're saying, hey, well, it's an improvement. I understand. I could go into a neighborhood that's a house is worth $200,000. A sale is worth $200,000. I can put a $400,000 house in that neighborhood if I want to. Now, does that justify making all the rest of them $400,000? I guess that's, y'all's decision to make, but I could go in there. So, the improvement does come, typically the improvement on a lot, I can add an expansion, go back to my area. I can add an expansion on, I can price myself out of a neighborhood. Well, that's on me. I put the money in it to raise the value of my house, which put it higher than what the neighborhood sells for. To me, that improvement is on me. I might not get my money out of it. I can put in a $50,000 kitchen, but it only gets me $25,000 increase on the sale price. I understand that. I have no problem. I have a problem when they say, hey, now you're going to get penalized for your improvement because we want to jack your land price up. And now the improvement puts you into a good bit more than what the true value of the sale is. They could have easily dropped the numbers of the land, which matches up page 82, 250, 175 is right there. You got plenty of single lot tear down, split lots that all match, that our neighborhood should be treated exactly like these other two neighborhoods. It would have lowered the land, which then would make all these existing owners who can't afford to hire lawyers. So, we're kind of at a disadvantage. So, now here, most of these people are on fixed incomes. They can't hire a lawyer. I sat in on the last county BER, and it was some 60 to 80 people online wanting to talk about it, not quite understanding the process. Some of them would come on, they were just trying to get off because it was so many people saying that, hey, we're just going to drop our case because it was a lawyer saying that the owner has no more money to pay for lawyer fees.
So Jack, I mean, we're getting way out the bounds.
Well, we're in argument, but try to stick to this case, Mr. Griffin.
Just trying to point out that the land values could have been reasonably priced to match the values on page 82, to match the values which are shown for the split lot sales. Yes, maybe they're back 2015, 2016, but they were split lot sales, which is what brought the county in to begin with. Now you've got three sales that, they're wanting to use. Two of them totally wrong because they've had sale signs in the yard. It's taken them 2 to 4 years. So I feel like the proof is there. We match up to the other two neighborhoods, which are the lower values. We match up to the split lot sales when you want to look at those. So, I feel like, the lower values are justified. Yes, maybe I don't have a degree. I can look at the numbers. The city has a degree, and yet they still had everything valued high. So just because we've got the certifications doesn't mean you get it right. So yes, I have no method behind mine. I am just looking at the numbers that are on there. And I feel like the numbers reflect a lower valuation on the land.
All right. Questions from the commissioners before we go into executive session to deliberate on the motion? Seeing none. All right, Ms. Bendette, if you will close everybody out, we will, once we get to a decision on this motion, we will come back and you will be back as participants. Right now, it will just be the commission members, Mr. Pelfrey and Ms. Garrett and Ms. Bendette. All right.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have everybody back and we are live and recording.
Okay, thank you. And I see the Mecklenburg County folks and Mr. Griffith, it looks like you're on, but I don't see your video. Okay, can both of y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin, you can hear me okay? All
Yes,
right.
I can.
The commission has deliberated on the motion and voted unanimously to deny the motion. So at this time, Mr. Adden, we'll hear from you on behalf of your witnesses on behalf of the county.
Call Jeremy Blackwelder. State your name, please,
Jeremy Blackwelder,
and where you employed,
Mecklenburg County.
and what capacity.
I am a senior appraiser here with Mecklenburg County.
And just briefly go over your education and qualifications.
I have over 15 years in fee appraisal experience and 10 years in mass appraisal experience.
Are you a certified real estate appraiser?
Yes,
Are you certified by the North Carolina Department of Revenue?
yes.
When were you certified by the Department of Revenue? Do you recall?
Maybe 2011, I believe.
Have you been continuously certified since?
Yes.
I would tender Mr. Blackwelder as an expert in the field of mass appraisal of real estate and ad valorem appraisal of real property.
All right, without objection for Mr. Griffin. Mr. Griffin, do you have any objection?
No, I did not.
So admitted.
Now, you have the county exhibits in front of you, Mr. Blackwelder. Now, exhibit number 1 is the property record card showing a value of $382,500, correct?
Yes.
Now, but the county contends the value should only be $380,000. Is that right?
That is correct.
Can you just take us through the process of what occurred in order to change the value from $382,500 to $380,000?
So when the revaluation went out, it didn't come to light until about January 2020, and that there were some issues with this neighborhood. So 2 other appraisers and myself, both of them with fee appraisal and mass appraisal experience, sat down and reviewed this whole neighborhood. And we came up with, the appraisal methodology for that neighborhood. We looked at all the sales in the neighborhood. We made adjustments for the land sales. We established our base lot value. We did see that there were a few adjustments for if you were, slightly smaller. It didn't show that there was much of an adjustment made for size. So we made a small adjustment for size in this, unless it was, say, over like an acre or so. But our base value, or our base lot size in that neighborhood was 0.04 to 0.799. So that carried a $400,000 land value.
Excuse me, Mr. Blackwelder.
Yes.
This, Mr. Wheeler,
Yes.
when did you say you did this?
We did this in January 2020.
And the effective date of reval?
January 1st, 2019.
All right, thank you.
So, and did you do this because it came to light in January 2020 that there was a misapplication of the schedule of values originally?
Yes, that is correct. So we reviewed the whole neighborhood.
And so in reviewing the neighborhood, it was you and two other certified North Carolina appraisers?
Yes,
And in reviewing that, you determined that the base lot price prior to the review, what was the base lot price?
it was 425,000.
And after the review, what was the base lot price?
It was 400,000.
Okay. And so the $400,000 base lot price, what Mr. Griffin's property is 380. Why is it not considered, what's the difference between the 380 and the 400 for his particular lot?
So it has a size adjustment on it of -5% for size, for the size of its lot.
Now, you said that the base lot was 0.04 acres to 0.799 acres is $400,000.
Yes.
And what sales did you and the other two appraisers consider in coming up with that $400,000 base lot value?
I mean, we considered the 419 that sold 1018. It was a 0.552 acre lot that was demolished and it backed up to flood.
That's parcel 185-091-07.
That's correct.
And that is one of the property record cards, exhibit number 8 for the county.
We also looked at parcel 185-06113, which sold for 345. It sold 1218. It was a 0.472 acre lot. That was a house that had been demolished. The real estate agent was also the buyer. She didn't take any real estate fees on it. We do know that. And there are drainage issues on that property that we know.
Hold on, Mr. Adden, let me go back. Let me finish what I was thinking about.
Mr. Wheeler,
Okay,
go ahead.
what was the value, what was the original value of the property on 1119?
That was the 382,500.
So nothing changed on this property when you reconsidered it again in 2020?
It went down 2,500. It went down from 382.5 to 380,000. It dropped $2,500 in value. His went down.
Did any go up? And the reason I ask, if the reason I ask is, can you do that when the horse is out of the barn?
Well, yeah, under 185.
Can you go back and change a 1119 value over a year later?
Well, 105.
Well,
105.287 says one of the reasons for changing a value in a non-revaluation year is for misapplication of the schedule of values. What happened was that there were enough appeals in this neighborhood where the county looked at it and determined that there were some issues with the land values. And therefore, they restudied it and changed those land values, changed the values of some of the properties. Most of them went down, some of them went up and all. But strictly based on 105.387, a misapplication of the schedule of values that it was done. His particular property here went down in value.
So you don't think that a year later, if I've got my value on my property and I've already paid property taxes on that value in 2019,
right?
You don't think it looks kind of funny to come back a year later and the next year my tax bill went up?
Absolutely, and you'd have the right to appeal that, and the county would have to show that there was a misapplication of the schedule of values. In this case, the case before us is the value went down, and a lot of the values went down. We were correcting values going down. That was the problem. and all. We wanted to do what was fair for the taxpayers. And in this case, in Mr. Griffin's case, the value actually went down.
All right, sir.
We changed
Thank
the
you.
base lot value from 425 to 400.
All right, sir. Thank you.
And again, this case is one that's before us, before the commission. Not
I understand.
Not the other cases.
I
All right,
understand.
let me ask a clarification question, and then I see Alex wants to ask something as well. Mr. Blackwelder, when you made this adjustment because you saw there was a misapplication, did you go back and adjust all the other lots that were valued based on your original valuation that you then decided had some issues and you reduced Mr. Griffin's?
We went through and looked at the whole neighborhood again, because there were multiple appeals to the DER level in 2020. So there were some issues with the neighborhood. I feel currently that we have resolved all the issues in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Griffin, Mr. Guest, excuse me.
When we started the hearing, I wrote down that the county's valuation was $382,500. I'm now hearing that the county has lowered that value to $380,000.
Yes.
I
and
want to
said-
know what is the value the county is asking us to decide today. I just want a number.
Right, 380,000, and that's what we put in the pretrial order, the pre-hearing order, 380.
Thank you. And then one question for Mr. Blackwelder. So, Mr. Blackwelder, you're stating that in January of 2020, when you re-looked at this entire neighborhood under 105-287, that you did increase some of the owners' land valuations. You increased some, you reduced some. Is that an accurate statement?
As far as the land, I think the majority of the land decreased because our base land value went from 425 to 400,000. So our base dropped $25,000. There could possibly be something changed that I don't want to say that it did not happen. It could have, but the majority, if not all, went down. The overall values, I do have documents. There was 30 that increased overall value in the neighborhood.
But you changed the land valuation to 400 as your base.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
How many parcels are in this tax neighborhood? Second paragraph.
There are 144 parcels in the neighborhood.
So how many decreased in overall value?
There were 103 that decreased.
And how many increased in value?
There were 30 that increased and 11 remained the same.
All right, let me ask a clarification question here. What time frame are you talking about, the increases and decreases? Are you talking about the January 2020 or when they were initially valued?
Well, when we did the value, when we looked at it in 2020, but we're basing all of this information we based off of information January 1st, 2019 before. So it's almost kind of like doing a retrospective appraisal, because we're doing it as of January 1st, 2019, because we used all that data before for our valuation.
And are you saying some of those values then went up?
There were 30 that increased in value, overall value, land and building.
Well, as far as the land we're talking about, I understood you took your base price from 425 to 400. So based on the land valuations, none of them would have gone up when you made that adjustment in 2020. Am I understanding
Correct.
correctly?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So, all right, go back. I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwelder. We're trying to get things so we understand kind of what was going on, and the timing here is we have two different times going on. Thank you.
So 103 of the 144 parcels in this neighborhood, their value went down for 2020 and subsequent years.
Correct.
So the base lot value went down from 425 to 400. Now, what did you base, what supports that that $400,000 base lot value?
The current sales that we had up until January 1st, 2019. We looked at the 15 sales and stuff for trending purposes only, but the market definitely has increased in that area in the county since 2015.
All right, I need to ask one more clarification question. You said you adjusted down from the 382.5 to 380, I think is what you're contending now. Was that based on solely the adjustment in the land price that you were using base price from 425,000 to 400,000, or was there some other factors there?
There was a size adjustment on there for 5%. That would have, anything that was less than 0.4 or anything less than 0.4 of an acre was reduced 5% for size.
Okay, that was not based on the 425 to 400. That's after you got to the 400.
But that, we would have got to the 400 for our base for the whole neighborhood. And then we would apply a size minus 5% to
Okay,
get from the 400 to the 380.
okay, thank you.
Now, so there was, Mr. Griffin had on his exhibits a $419,000 sale of a lot in October of 18, correct?
Yes,
A $345,000 sale in December of 2018. And that was a sale where there was no realtor commission.
yes, correct.
So had it been a typical sale between a willing buyer and a willing seller, not being a real estate agent, then the sales price would actually be increased by about 6%.
Correct.
And, 6% of 345,000 is 20,400 if my math is correct. Is that right?
Correct.
So our December 2018 sale would be comparable. The sale price, instead of being 345, would be closer to 365,000. Correct?
That is correct.
And then there was a June of 2018 sale of 434,000.
Yes.
And those three sales right there that all occurred within the prior year prior to the revaluation, you contend support the $400,000 base lot value.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you drive the neighborhood and look at all these lots and everything?
Yes, we wrote it multiple times.
And you aware that it doesn't have sidewalks, it doesn't have curb and gutter?
Yes, and I mean, the buyers in that, I guess, I mean, they don't really look at the curb and gutter so much. They are building the $1.5 to $2 million homes in the neighborhood.
Now, Mr. Griffin talked about one lot being for sale for several years. Do you have any explanation for that?
Yes, they didn't market the lot for sale. What they're marketing is a $1.5 million to $2 million house. So to buy that lot, you have to build with that builder, and it's going to be about a $1.5 to $2 million price. So yeah, it takes a little while to market homes in the $1.5 to $2 million price range.
Now, look at county exhibit number 3.
Let me ask one more clarification question. You're talking about marketing that house. Was the house already built on that lot?
No, sir, it's proposed construction.
Okay.
So the buyer could make changes, build it however they would like.
Basically, these lots in this neighborhood that are for sale, obviously anybody could buy them, but a lot of the buyers that are coming in are custom home builders.
Right.
And they're the ones that are paying the 400,000 plus for these lots. Now, look at county exhibit number 3. The aerial photograph of the subject property is the vacant lot with the star on it, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, behind that, there's a big white house. You see that?
Yes,
Now, was that property sold in 2017?
yes.
What was the condition of that house? When did it sell in 2017?
It sold 11/17 for $400,000, and it did have a house on it that was demolished.
So directly behind, almost directly behind the subject property, there was a $400,000 sale of a tear down in November 2017 for $400,000.
That is correct.
And was that property more than 0.4 acres?
It was 0.647 of an acre.
Now, this house that's on that property there, as you see it, do you know what the current assessed value is for that property?
Believe it's around the 1.8 million possibly. That looking, I think it's around that 1.8 million.
So a custom home builder would have bought that lot for $400,000 in November of 17 and built a house that he was able to then sell house and lot for 1.8 million or more.
Correct.
And then if you look at the next exhibit, the next page 5, you can actually see that house in the background. Okay, then go to the residential improvement report, which is exhibit number 5, starting on page 9 of the county exhibits. Now, the land values in this neighborhood, this is all the neighborhood as Mr. Griffin characterized the Hunter Wonderwood Lane neighborhood.
Yes.
And these land values, for the most part, have a base value of 400,000, and then there's some adjustments to get to 380 or 360, or maybe a few other adjustments.
Yes, that is correct.
And the land value of Mr. Griffin's property next door to the vacant lot is $400,000.
I believe that is correct. Yes. Yes, it is.
And Mr. Harbold, who owns the land on the other side, his base value is 400,000 for the land.
Yes, if it's the base size, there could be a size adjustment on it slightly if it's less.
Now, if you look at exhibit number 7, exhibit 7 shows 2 comps. There's comp number 1, which was a $419,000 sale. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, that shows that there is a house on it now, but as of 1/1/19, was there a house on it? If you need to, you can refer to the property record card on page, that is exhibit 8, page 15.
Yeah, I believe it was vacant. Yes.
Okay, so it sold it was vacant 1/1/19 and sold for 419,000.
Correct.
And the comp 2 it also was vacant on 1/1/19,
Yes.
and it sold for 434,000.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Griffin's exhibits include some properties on the Rutledge Avenue area, which is across Randolph Road. Is that area within the same tax neighborhood here?
It is not.
So did you work that Rutledge Avenue area, do you recall?
I did not work that area.
And would the method that the county used for determining the values for those subdivisions over there, would they be similar to the method used in the Hunter Wonderwood Lane area?
Yes.
Same extraction method for tear downs and demo sales?
Yes.
Same sales approach for houses that were sold?
Yes.
Now, county didn't use the income approach, did it?
No, did not.
It doesn't do that for single-family residential properties?
No.
And you didn't use the cost approach?
I mean, well, we look at the cost approach, but the market what we have is our market-driven approach.
The market approach is the best of the three approaches for
Yes,
determining single-family residential values here.
yes, it is.
And do you feel that there were sufficient sales of demo sales, tear down sales, and vacant lot sales in order to establish a $400,000 base lot?
Yes, especially after looking back and looking at, I mean, you look at the trend and see what everything's going towards, and then the market increasing throughout that time in that area. Yes,
You're referring to some of the work that Mr. Griffin did in tabulating sales from 2015, 2016, 2017, and 18, correct?
yes,
Now, when the county determines comes up with the base lot value, do you take into account similarities and differences between the properties?
yes,
And do you take into account location?
we do. We took traffic, there's all kinds of influences, drainage, I mean, you kind of name it. I mean, there's different influences on different properties throughout the county, throughout this neighborhood.
Well, location's one,
Yes,
size is another.
yes,
And in this particular case, if it's the base lot value, if it's a 400,000 is reduced if you're less than 0.4 acres.
correct,
You say topography and drainage
yes,
is taken into account.
yes,
Traffic is taken into account.
yes,
All those differences that you would take into account in doing an appraisal.
yes,
And so you're not familiar with you haven't studied the Rutledge Avenue area to determine what similarities or differences it has with Mr. Griffin's neighborhood.
I did not.
And then the other properties that he says, Lansdowne, which is 2.4 miles away, did you study that one?
I did not.
But again, was the county's method of determining the values of those properties similar to the method used for the Hunter Wonderwood Lane area?
Yes, yes,
We don't pick and choose one neighborhood over the other.
we do not.
Now, do you feel that the sales that you used, that you and your other appraisers used to come up with the $400,000 base lot value, do you feel that those were similar, were reasonable comps for this neighborhood?
I do.
Now, are all the lots in the neighborhood assessed similarly, or at least in the same method?
Yes, they are.
And that method is you have a base lot value and then you make adjustments on size, traffic, topography, et cetera?
Correct, yeah.
Is it your opinion as as a certified appraiser that the subject property is assessed consistently with other similar properties in the neighborhood?
Yes, I believe it is.
Is it your opinion that the subject is assessed consistently with sale prices of other similar properties in the neighborhood?
Yes, I believe it is.
And what sale prices do you believe support this value?
I believe all the ones that we've listed here, I mean, the most current ones, obviously, right up to our revaluation date, the 17 and 18 sales.
That being all of those sales, 3 of those 4 sales were over 400,000 and one was 345,000, I believe.
Correct.
Did the county use recognized appraisal standards in determining the assessed value of the subject property?
Yes, we did.
Are you aware of any errors or inconsistencies with the county's determination of value, the current value of $380,000?
No, I believe that to be very accurate.
You agree that the 382.5 was not an accurate number?
I agree.
is the county's value, is the county's $380,000 value now consistent with the duly adopted schedule of values for the 2019 reappraisal?
I believe it is.
Is the county's value of the property consistent with USPAP standards?
Yes,
Is the county's value of the property consistent with IAAO standards?
yes,
You've been through this neighborhood, you've looked at it, you've reviewed it with other certified appraisers. Is there any doubt in your mind that this property should not be valued at $380,000?
no, I agree that the value at 380 is a very good value, for what we have on this property.
It's consistent with other lots in the subdivision?
Yes, it's consistent with everything throughout the neighborhood.
Do you see any basis to determine the value of this property at $277,000?
No, I do not.
Is averaging select sales a proper method for determining the value of property?
No. We would, and we've looked at all the sales in the neighborhood. We would establish the size and the adjustments made to them. So based on all the sales in the neighborhood, I feel that, I mean, the 380, I mean, I feel that it's consistent with throughout the neighborhood.
I don't have any other questions.
All right, Mr. Griffith, you have a
May-
chance to
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, wait a minute. We've got some commissioners that want to ask questions.
if
Everybody
you don't,
does. Okay, or almost. Let's see. I think I saw Terry first. Mr. Wheeler?
Mr. Blackwater, are all the, if you're on Fairview Road where the taxpayer's property is, are all those lots valued the same?
They are, with the exception of the size.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
With the exception of like the size adjustments. They could fall outside the base range and have a size adjustment on it.
So standing in front of the taxpayer's lot, it appears that the lot to the left of him is larger. Would that mean his land value is higher?
If it's 0.04 to 0.799, it's going to be 400,000.
What would you think would happen if he had the ability to split this lot, since the two owners own on each side of it? You wouldn't apply 180,000 to each, would you?
No, I would not.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
I think too, like, when we're talking about split lots, when a builder goes in there and buys a lot and splits it, I mean, you're not going to just split that down the middle in my eyes. I mean, they're kind of creating a utility there, so which increases the value.
All right, so thank you.
I think I saw Mr. Peasley next.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. On taxpayers exhibit, county's exhibit 7, which is page 13. There's a map and there are two comps on there. Are those two comps, is that the same neighborhood as the subject property?
It is.
Okay. And the taxpayer has mentioned that other neighborhoods have a different base value, 250, 175, et cetera. And I understand that you have based the value of the sales in that neighborhood, in the subject neighborhood. My question is what is the cachet about this neighborhood that builders want to go in and buy lots for $400,000 as opposed to another neighborhood that they could pick up a lot or a tear down for 250? What is it about this neighborhood?
I mean, this is, I mean, it's in the Coswald area. So, I mean, it's in an area where they're paying that in other neighborhoods. I guess this is just kind of a sought after little area there.
Well, what is there a difference between it and another neighborhood where the land value is 250, or another neighborhood that's where it's 175? Do you know why builders, buyers, profiteers, whoever, are going into this particular neighborhood? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Right. I mean, in that area as a whole, I mean, there's definitely neighborhoods that are, there's buyers in there paying that $400,000, and so for a lot. 400 plus. I mean, most of the lot sales aren't, they're demo sales because there's not a whole lot of vacant land sales in the area. But the people coming in want to be in that location, so they're willing to pay that for a house, tear it down. Tearing down a house is much like clearing a lot. I mean, you have similar costs there. You got the grading and cutting down the trees as you would to demoing a house. So that's why a lot of these sales are demo sales.
Further question, Mr. Peasley? Mr. Guest?
Thank you. Mr. Blackwelder, let's go back to North Carolina Statute 105-287, which allows you to revalue the property due to a misapplication of value. You valued this property and the surrounding properties, I'm assuming Rutledge, the property right across the street, that neighborhood, back on January 1st, 2019. And then between 2019 and January of 2020, when you went back and reevaluated this particular area, what occurred? Explain to me what occurred to have you realize that you had a misapplication of the original value? What caused you to go back and only look at his specific neighborhood?
There were lots that were priced in there as fractionalized lots, which we don't do. And there was some, a neighborhood modifier put on a certain area that did not need to be there. And so, I mean, that was the two biggest reasons, I do believe, for going back and redoing that neighborhood.
Okay, and you only redid that neighborhood. So I believe you said that you did not look at the Rutledge Avenue area, which is right across the street. Is that correct?
Correct.
So you do not feel that you could have also had a misapplication of the schedule of value in the neighborhood across the street if you had it in this neighborhood?
Possibly. I mean, without having all the data and the appeals that we had in this, it was kind of brought to our attention that there was obviously there's some issues going on in the neighborhood, so we re-looked at it.
Do you know what what you have established as your base lot value in the Rutledge Avenue area neighborhood?
According to the documents here, it looks like about $250,000.
Okay, so you have that base lot at $250,000. Now, the Rutledge Avenue area, is that an area where people are allowed to buy properties, do tear downs? Are they allowed to split lots in that neighborhood?
If they meet the size to the zoning, I would say yes, they could.
Then they can split, okay.
Yeah.
Is there a value to a builder or someone being able to buy a lot and then split that lot and build additional properties on the lot? Have two properties instead of one?
Yeah, that, in my opinion, would be that you get a greater utility there.
Okay, so you get a greater utility if you can split the lot. Back in the taxpayers, which is Wonderwood, is that the neighborhood for the taxpayer?
Yes.
He's testified that there are deed restrictions and he cannot split his lots. So therefore, would that result in a reduction of value? Is there a deficiency in those lots because they cannot be split, where the neighborhood across the street, the builder can buy, split the lots and have an increased value?
Yeah, I mean, there was a reduction given, and it was for size. And we looked at it, I mean, as a single lot. We didn't look at it as being able to divide from the size it is now. I mean, we didn't look at it as being able to split again.
Okay, and again, you felt there was no reason to look at any of the surrounding areas. When you did the original valuation of this property, and you had the lot established at $425,000 before the reduction to the $400,000 and before the reduction for any lot size basis, would you compare your base lot value of $425,000 that you started with? Would you compare that to a neighboring neighborhood across the street where you have a base price of $250,000, where the lot sizes may be similar?
If I did not have enough sales in the immediate neighborhood, I would go to the next one. But I felt that I had enough sales in the immediate neighborhood not to go outside of it.
Okay, and the sales in the neighborhood here, Woodland Lane, when you're doing your evaluation of the surrounding areas, if both of these properties, if Rutledge and Woodland are both in the Cotswold area, within a mile of each other, would you think that perhaps the Rutledge values of the land should be higher than 250? I mean, why would right across the street be $150,000 or $175,000 lower on the initial base lot price if a builder can buy on either side of the street, and on one side of the street he can do a tear down, split a lot and build two houses, and on the other side of the street he can only build one house? Why wouldn't you compare the geographic area, which you call the Cotswold area?
I mean, we looked at the area, but I mean, we felt that we had enough qualified sales in the neighborhood.
You had enough qualified sales in the Woodland neighborhood, and you didn't think that those qualified sales in Woodland would in any way impact Rutledge. Rutledge, in other words, is justified to have a much lower value per land than what you're assessing in Woodland.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Wheeler, I didn't unmute. I apologize.
Mr. Blackwater, if I look at Exhibit 1, which is the property tax part of the paper, you have that?
Yes, I do.
Bottom, sort of left center, 6510, is that the number for the neighborhood of the taxpayer's property?
It is, that's an S510.
Oh, I'm sorry, S510.
Yes.
Yeah, my printer, I guess, didn't work too good. Is Rutledge a different number, or is it an S510?
It's a different number, different neighborhood.
When you found these corrections that you needed to make to the schedule of values, when you change that neighborhood, does it change every property in that neighborhood to some degree?
There were 11, I believe, that did not change.
Did you say 150 or so?
144.
144. Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Griffith, we will let you examine Mr. Blackwater.
I think just to point out on a few things that were said, it sounds like Mr. Blackwater stated that basically.
All right, you need to ask questions, Mr. Griffin and Mr. Blackwell. You'll get a chance to sum up later, but you
Okay.
need to ask questions of him.
All right, Mr. Blackwell, all right. I'd like to ask, you mentioned that you said that basically the Rutledge Avenue, the Hunter Wonderwood, and the Jefferson Drive were basically all valued using the same method. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if they're all being valued using the same method, looking at the Wonderwood area, we have 4 sales. If you go to your 2018, which seems to be what's being used, Rutledge has 3 tear down splits and Jefferson has 5 looking at those. So, you know, it doesn't seem like the exact same method was used since the values are coming up different on the land.
We look at all the available sales data that we have, come up with a credible result.
And so then you would tell me if we would bring in an outside appraiser certified by, you know, Department of Revenue, everything like that was stated above. We brought in an outside appraiser and we sent him to all 3 of those areas. They would, with no knowledge of what's going on, do we think they would confirm all these different values?
Wouldn't think so. I mean, you're going to be a little different in different areas. I mean, each appraiser, I mean, you're probably going to have, there's going to be a little bit of differences between, say, if you were an appraiser and I'm an appraiser. We're not going to have exactly the same opinion, but we're going to have that data to back up our opinion.
I guess that's where, you know, where the whole case is presented is just don't think the opinions between the 3 different areas, which was, you know, sounds like at least 2 or 3 different appraisers coming up with the same value. So it looks like a couple pinpoint cases in this neighborhood kind of set the high values. One other thing, there was a mention about when we were talking about, you know, from the original set of values that were placed on the Hunter Wonderwood when they first came out, land values were at 425. When they came back and reappraised, I guess you said that was January 2020. Reappraised.
Somewhere right around that time.
So it looks like, you know, so there again, there was a set of values.
You need to ask a question and frame it in a question, Mr. Griffin.
Sorry. So why did some of the property land values go down on this reappraisal in January and some of them go up?
Because there was a modifier in a certain area there on Plum Neely that did not need to be there. And it was an error, it was a glaring error.
Okay, that's all I have.
All right, I have a couple questions. Mr. Blackwelder, how do you distinguish the properties that we've seen here that have some houses on them that only have a $24 square foot, and there was another one or 2 that had what appeared to be a very low square foot price for the house on the lot when kept the land value the same? Can you explain that to us?
Yes, I mean, some of it could be just your normal depreciation that brings that down. But in this neighborhood, I mean, there's some residual values, and we placed 2 levels of residual values. One's at 90%, which, I mean, it's a house that predominantly in the neighborhood is going to be torn down. So it has a 10% of value left on it. Then we had classification of a future tear down. So that's had a value of about 25% of value. So that's saying, I mean, the house would only have 25% of value because it's going to be future is I mean, they're probably gonna wind up tearing it down somewhere in the near future, but not right now.
So am I understanding that you value the house based on the probability that it's going to be torn down, the
That's,
building value?
that's correct.
Okay. When you value these properties, and it's been, I think, one of the things that was being asked in some of the questions, and you have these two different neighborhoods, three different neighborhoods. I don't know, were there three neighborhoods involved in these different exhibits that we've looked at today, or just two?
3 different neighborhoods.
Okay. When you value those and you're doing a revaluation, and you have properties right across the street, and you've grouped 144 in this neighborhood, and across the street, I don't know how many you have, but you have another number, and you have a big variation like this. Do you not go back and look and see why? Is it just because they got assigned to this neighborhood versus the other neighborhood, or do you not look and see why the values are so much different, especially when you have only a limited number of these type of sales and very few vacant lot sales after the demolition?
Well, when it originally went out on our revaluation date, there were a lot of errors. So, I mean, we went to this, and by correcting this, or by going through this and relooking at this neighborhood, we wanted to make sure everything was correct in this neighborhood. So that's what we did. That's why we're at the land value that we're at, because it's correct for the market. And we reviewed everything. That's ultimately, that's where we're at. I mean, to me, this neighborhood is probably one of the most correct.
Well, but if it is, it means that the others are way off base. And did you not look for evaluation purposes overall to see if there's a real justification? If either it appears one's too high or two or too low, just based on the neighborhood they were assigned. I guess that's my question. Do you have an explanation? I know you didn't do the other neighborhoods, but somebody did from your department. And can you give us some kind of explanation of what your opinion is to what happened there? Or can you justify it totally?
As far as justifying it, probably can't. I don't know. I mean, I haven't really looked at that neighborhood. Looking, I guess, at the sales, it doesn't appear that they're
If you can't answer the question, you can't answer the question.
I really can't answer the question, I guess.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Michaud.
Yes, Mr. Blankerich? I'm sorry, is that your name? I may be mispronouncing it. Is that?
You talking to me?
Yes, with the county.
Yeah, Mr. Blackwelder, yes.
Mr. Blackwelder, excuse me. When you are appraising property, could you go through the approach that you use?
Well, I mean, the first step would come up with valuing our land. We look at all the sales for land, vacant land sales. If we don't have that, I mean, we look at tear downs if they're in an area. We kind of look at that. We establish our land value, and then we look at all the houses. We look at the grading on them. We grade them to the best of our ability and to the schedule of values for what they are. We just, I mean, we
Anything else, Mr. Blackwelder?
Yeah, well, I mean, we come up with the values. I mean, we have to come up with values that are for, I mean, we look at all the sales in the neighborhood. So you have improved sales in the neighborhood. So you look at that, and I mean, when they're building houses that they're building in there, we look at the ratios between those two. I mean, we just kind of look at everything when you're going throughout the neighborhood to come up with our building value. We look at the sales in the neighborhood. We come up with a sales price per square foot. We look at it all different ways.
You mentioned neighborhood. What do you look at as a neighborhood?
Well, this neighborhood here, the subject neighborhood in question is S510. So it's its geographical area. So we look
Thank
at
you.
all the sales within that area.
All right, let's see. I think Mr. Griffith had finished. And I believe, do we have any other questions before we go to, is there any redirected, Mr. Adden?
I have some more questions to clarify some of these points.
Okay, go ahead.
So to be clear, the subject is in neighborhood S510.
That's correct.
And there were sales of tear downs, vacant lots in 2017 and 2018 for $400,000 plus that support the $400,000 base lot value for neighborhood S510.
Yes, that's correct.
And the neighborhood on Rutledge Avenue across from Randolph is not, those parcels are not in neighborhood S510.
I'm sorry. I'm hearing some background noise, and I'm wondering.
Okay, Mr. Griffith, if you'll mute your mic, I believe it's your papers. Thank you.
Okay, the neighborhood on Rutledge Avenue is not, those parcels are not in S510.
That is correct.
And Mr. Griffin has 4 sales from 2014 to 2018 in that neighborhood.
Correct.
You have not run a qualified sales report for sales for that neighborhood that would show all sales in 17 and 18 for that neighborhood, have you?
I have not.
Because the subject was not in that neighborhood.
Correct.
And so just because he has 4 sales doesn't mean there aren't other sales out there for neighborhood, for the Rutledge Avenue neighborhood.
Correct.
And the Jefferson Drive neighborhood, those parcels aren't in S510 either, are they?
They are not.
And so he has 6 sales from 2015 to 2018, but there may be other sales on a qualified sales report for that neighborhood.
Possibly so. Yes.
Now, you testified that the method was the same for each of those 3 neighborhoods.
Correct.
Is the data the same for each of those 3 neighborhoods?
It is not.
So a sale in S510 of lots over $400,000, you would not use that sale in the Jefferson Drive neighborhood, would you?
I would not.
And you wouldn't use a sale of over 400,000 in S510 in the Rutledge Avenue neighborhood, would you?
No.
You look at those particular neighborhoods, and is there sufficient information before you today to give any opinion as to the lot values of the Rutledge Avenue parcels?
No.
Is there any information before you today to give you an opinion as to lot values of Jefferson Drive properties?
No.
And is that because we're looking at S510?
Yes.
Okay, now, and so the data is different from those neighborhoods, but the method used is the same.
Correct.
Now, there was some testimony about the S510, Mr. Griffith's neighborhood, about whether parcels could be split or not. And his testimony was there were 9 parcels on his street that could not be split. You recall that?
I do.
But there are other parcels in that neighborhood that can be split. If you look at his exhibit on page 81, there are numerous split lots. Is that right?
Yes.
So when Commissioner Guest was talking about that there were splits in the neighborhood of Rutledge Avenue, there are also splits in neighborhood S510.
Correct.
Now, there was, Commissioner Wheeler asked you some testing about if this particular lot was split, would you split the $380,000 value in half if it was split between the adjoining parcels? Now, my question is, as of January 1, 2019, was this property split?
No.
As of January 1, 2019, was the highest and best use for this property as a single-family residential lot?
Yes.
If in the future, Mr. Harbaugh and Mr. Griffin decide to split this lot in two, would that still be would there be 3 lots available for single-family residences or just 2?
At that point, it would just be 2.
And so at that point, the county would reevaluate the land value for each of those 2 parcels.
Correct.
And the land value would change because it would no longer be less than 0.4 acres, it would be more than 0.4 acres.
It would have the size adjustment going the other way.
But as of January 1, 2019, this property was valued as a single-family residential lot that a custom home builder could come in and buy and put a $1.5 billion house on it.
Yes, that's correct.
I don't have any other questions.
All right, Mr. Griffin, do you have anything? And I see Mr. Guest has got a question. Mr. Griffin,
Yeah, I would add a couple things to that.
Well, big questions right now. We'll let you make an
Okay.
argument.
No, I have no questions at this time.
All right, Mr. Griffin, Mr. Guest.
Thank you. Mr. Blackwelder, it was just clarified that in the subject neighborhood, Woodland, that there are lots there that have been split. Okay. And the subject property, it's testified that it cannot be split. So on the properties that have been split, and we now have 2 lots, they are a smaller lot size because they've been split. But what is the valuation of the land on these split lots in the subject neighborhood
Well, I mean,
compared to a non-split lot?
they're all going to be the same, depending on their size. The base lot for all sales in the neighborhood is $400,000. Okay, then there's a size range from 0.299 to or less, and it has a size -10. So we take 400,000 and we minus 10% off of it to come up with the value for those size lots.
So those are 360,000. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Point
Now,
three,
go ahead.
0.3 to 0.399, there's a -5 for size. The
Okay.
base, so all the lots that range from 0.4 to 0.799 are $400,000. And then 0.8 to 0.999 of an acre is plus 25%. And then 1 acre plus is plus 50%. So if you split a lot in any kind of configuration, it would, whichever size range it fell in, that's where the value would be. In the entire
Okay.
neighborhood.
So
Less
if I had a
traffic,
0.3 lot, okay, that would have been 400,000 minus 5%. If that lot was eligible to be split and I split it exactly in half, so now I've got a 0.15. So now that piece of property would fall under the lower than the 0.299. So that would be $360,000 for each half. So you
Correct.
effectively value the entire property at $720,000. Would that be correct?
yes, I mean, that's not the case in here, but yes, that's the way it would be valued.
Okay. Thank you very much.
On that
All right.
point, if you did that,
Mr.
you
Adden.
could then have each of those 0.15 acres, whatever it was, would support a house being able to be built on it.
It would have the same utility. It would allow a buyer to go in this area that wants to be there and have a house. So, I mean, you're gonna have, in my opinion, you're gonna have more of a utility there increase.
Yes, you would have more of a utility because the property can be split and now you can tax 2 lots. On the subject property, it cannot be split, and therefore it leads back to the question of, does it have less utility? That was the reason I was asking the question. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Griffith, did you have anything else? All right, if you don't have any other questions, we're going to move into closing arguments. Does anybody have a
No
question?
questions.
All right, I don't see anybody or hear anybody wants to ask a question, so at this time, we'll go into the closing arguments. And I assume, Mr. Adden, you said you were finished. Is that correct?
Yes, I just offer my exhibits into evidence.
All right, they are admitted. All right, Mr. Griffith, we're in the closing arguments now, so if you want to give us your closing arguments, and then we'll hear from the county, and then we will go into executive session and we will deliberate.
Yeah, I'd just like to end it on saying that the Wonderwood Hunter Lane area was definitely reevaluated because of the number of parcel owners who went downtown to complain about $400,000 property values. The other 2 areas, Jefferson and Rutledge, no complaints there for the owner because their land and house and tear down and everything that equals the price that they bought the stuff for. So their values, their land values were so low, there was no need to complain on their side. And definitely over in the Rutledge Avenue, the current sales prices are higher than the current county evaluated land values. So there is, a discrepancy there that people are paying more, but it hasn't been factored in yet. And then just to say that, we're seeing here, just based on the 3, that you got different appraisers, they're using different methods, and they are coming up with different results, which are shown in these 3. I don't know how you want to split up S510 versus an S520 versus whatever Rutledge is, but, when you look at the similarities of the properties, they are identical, and they are in close proximity to all the, valuable things that are out there with malls and stuff. And I think that's it.
Mr. Adden? Mr. Adden?
Yeah, as Mr. Blackwelder testified, originally the base lot value of this was $425,000. As Mr. Griffin just said, there were a lot of owners that were complaining about the value. So the county in January 2020, it was brought to the county's attention. So the county relooked at this at the entire entire tax neighborhood, S510. And when looking at it, the county realized that there was a misapplication of schedule of values, and pursuant to 105-287, we made adjustments for 2020 and future years. And those adjustments resulted in 103 of 144 properties going down. Okay, so there is some, I can see an argument could be made that the county should not go back and change any value, that it should have stayed. But the county recognized that there was a mistake in the neighborhood. There were modifiers that were not called for under the schedule of values, and they made adjustments to do what's right and correct the values. And as a result of the corrected values, 103 parcels, including this parcel, went down in value. 11 remained the same and 30 went up. And of course, those 30 parcels that went up, they have every right to appeal that increase in value to the Board of Equalization and Review and to the Property Tax Commission if possible. But we're not here to talk about those 30 that went up. We're here to talk about this property, which went down. And it went down in value because the base lot value was adjusted from 425 down to 400. And the evidence is overwhelming that $400,000 is supported by the sales. You've got a 2017 sale of the vacant lot, the big white house behind Mr. Griffin's lot. That was sold in November 2017 for $400,000, right there, right behind his property. And then a $1.5 million mansion is built on it. Why would a builder pay $400,000 for that lot? Why? Because he could put a $1.5 billion house on it and make a profit on that. A willing buyer, a willing seller. You have at least 3 other sales. June of 2018, $435,000. It's a tear down. This commission has already said that the tear down extraction method is a proper method for determining the land value. $435,000 for this property for a tear down certainly supports a $400,000 base value. The $419,000 sale, October 2018. Again, another tear down. That value there supports the county's $400,000 base value. Then you have the $345,000 sale in December of 18, which if you had included a real estate commission, would have been a $365,000 sale. Again, that supports the county's value. That had some drainage issues, so you would have, it would be an adjustment from the $400,000. In direct examination, Mr. Griffin testified that these sales, these $400,000 plus sales in 2018, he dismissed them as by saying the buyers, quote, paid too much. What is the county supposed to do when it is valuing lots in a subdivision if it isn't relying on sales in the months prior to the reval? How can you look at the actual sales, the sales in this neighborhood of over $400,000 and say that the value should be anything less? Their data does not support it. Now, does the sales in this area, do they support a change in value of the neighborhood of Rutledge over Rutledge Avenue? We don't have the qualified sales report for the Rutledge Avenue properties. We don't have all of the sales. We don't know what the similarities and differences. Mr. Griffin says, oh, the properties are exactly the same. They're exactly the same. Well, they may not be the same, because if they were the same, why aren't the builders paying $400,000 for lots over there if they're willing to pay $400,000 for lots in his neighborhood? The same thing with the Lansdowne area, 2.4 miles away, which is in a different school system. It does have a different high school to it. South Met, not Myers Park and all. That right there is the difference. That right there is a big difference for people looking to buy, especially when they're going to buy a lot and build a $1.2 million house, a $1.5 million house on it. They are going to buy a lot in the Myers Park area, high school assignment. So there are differences. We don't have the qualified sales report. We aren't here to debate the value of the Rutledge Avenue properties and the value of the Jefferson Drive properties. We're here to debate the value of a vacant lot as a 1119, a single family residential vacant lot in the Hunter Lane, Wonderwood Lane subdivision. And all of the sales, for the county to come up with the value differently, you would have to just ignore these sales of over $400,000. You just have to say, oh, we think the buyers paid too much. Wow, that would be arbitrary and illegal to just say, we think the buyers paid too much. We look at data, and we look at the data for this tax neighborhood. That's what's before the commission, not the data for these other ones and all. So should those other ones be adjusted? Possibly so. Maybe the county needs to go and look at those neighborhoods. But we are looking at this neighborhood, and that's what's before the commission. The commission does not have evidence of the values of lands in other neighborhoods. When you start changing that, you start looking at that neighborhood, then that neighborhood's gonna say, well, look at the neighborhood on the other side, and look at the neighborhood on the other side, and look at the neighborhood to the south and the north and the east. There are 360,000 parcels in Mecklenburg County. And it's like a Rubik's Cube. You change one, but you gotta change the other and all. And we try to do the best job we can. And the presumption is that our values are correct. And in this particular case, in January 2020, the county realized that, hey, our values were a little off. And they did the right thing and made adjustments that resulted in a decrease for this property and for 102 other parcels out of 144. And by doing the right thing, now we're being called into question. Well, we should have reduced it even more. How could we reduce these values more when you're staring in the face at these sales that range over $400,000? How could a certified appraiser say, I'm going to ignore $400,000 sales and come up with another value? You can't do it. So, in conclusion, the overwhelming evidence, the county has overcome its burden and has shown these sales that Mr. Griffin admits are accurate sales, but, quote, the buyer paid too much. On those sales support the county's value, and we ask that the commission uphold the $380,000 value.
All right. Other questions from commissioners? If not, Ben, if you would put us into an executive session, and then when we have reached a decision, we will be back with you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'll start now.
Mr. Chairman, I need to check on something. It'll take about 30 seconds.
We're going to take a break, short break, as soon as everybody's out. We can go ahead and do that. Let's just go it's 12:41. Let's come back at 12:50. Is that enough, everybody? Does that work? All right, 12:50.
All right, we are all set.
Okay, Mr. Griffin, can you hear me? All right, we see you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, Mr. Adden, you're giving a signal that you can hear me. All right, we were back in regular session, and the commission has deliberated over this. Extensive evidence that presented by Mr. Griffin, and then the county's evidence. And Mr. Griffin, although we think you raised some legitimate issues, we could not determine that we could find that the county's value of $380,000 for your lot, this lot, was arbitrary or exceeded the legal boundaries as applied to your lot. So, commission was unanimous in finding for the county that the value of your property is $380,000. I would say you presented a good bit of evidence. You put a lot of work into it, and I think you did a fine job in presenting your case.
Thank you.
All right, and you'll get a letter from the
Thank you.
commission with our decision. It'll be probably 30 to 60 days in that range, and it'll set out your our value and the opinion and your appeal rights. All right. Unless there's something else that needs to come before us in public session, Ms. Bendette, we will adjourn the public session. And
One thing, Your Honor.
Yes, sir, Mr. Adden.
I think have one Mecklenburg County case tomorrow. It's no AB 14, and there's no need for me to appear at that hearing.
That's my understanding. Is that your Steve? Do you know of any reason Mr. Adden needs to be on?
No, and the AB 14 issue are between the appellant and the commission, really. So the county doesn't really need to participate in that.
All right. Well,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Ms. Bendette, if you'll take us out of your session.
Just give me a few minutes here.